Chapter 336. Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Even though there were some disturbances in between, Misty Peak was indeed the biggest winner of the sect competition this time round. In this small courtyard, by Jishui River, everyone from Misty Peak, Nianqi and Xiaoning celebrated. However, everyone present had their own thoughts. Late at night, everyone had already dispersed. Under the hazy moonlight, a green-robed cultivator sat alone by Jishui River, gazing at the sparkling water surface in a daze. Beside the green-robed cultivator, there was even a pitch-black mutated beast sprawled on the ground. After growing up, the night spirit was burly and had extremely strong limbs. Every single inch of muscle was filled with explosive strength, and its claws were unusually sharp, hidden deep in the gaps of its fingers. Its head was like a wolf's and its bite strength was shocking. This was a body that was born to kill and could be considered as perfect. Right then, footsteps sounded from behind. Zimo. Xian Yi's voice sounded. Su Zimo was about to stand up when Xian Yi pressed down on his shoulder and sat down. Tomorrow, I intend to impart to you the other two secret skills of Misty Peak. I hope that you'll be able to master them before entering the ancient battlefield. That's not very appropriate, Su Zimo frowned. The inheritance of the three secret skills of Misty Peak was no small matter. Without the Patriarch's permission, no one could impart them privately or it would be a violation of the sect's rules. It's fine. Xian Yi said, I've already sent a message back to the sect regarding the sect competition. Before long, the sect will receive news and agree to my arrangements. Pausing for a moment, Xian Yi continued, furthermore, this is Wen Xian's unfulfilled wish. I'll fulfill it on his behalf. Su Zimo nodded and did not decline. The remaining two secret skills, Ethereal Sword and Ethereal Wings, were extremely obvious for his combat strength. For the past 10 days, Su Zimo spent almost all of his time cultivating Ethereal Sword and Ethereal Wings. Due to the lack of time, he had yet to master the first level of Ethereal Sword, Shadow Remnant. However, Su Zimo comprehended Misty Wings extremely quickly and could already use it freely. Possessing the Misty Wings meant that Su Zimo did not need to rely on external objects, and could also soar into the air like Taoist Jin Dan. Furthermore, his agility and mobility in the air had greatly increased. In terms of secret techniques alone, Ethereal Wings was far more useful than the other two. The Ethereal Wings could be used as a life-saving technique, but it could also be used as an offensive technique. It was flexible and versatile. Even if one had cultivated it to the Jin Dan realm, the Ethereal Wings would still be very useful. In the ancient battlefield, not only were there elixirs and weapons, there were also various spirit arts, secret skills, and even the inheritances of powerful sections. It was said that the Ethereal Wings were obtained by a sect disciple who entered the primordial battlefield. This day, someone from the palace gathered the people of the 4 ranking lists and prepared to enter the ancient battlefield. Before they left, Xian Yi instructed, keep your sect badges and try your best to keep a low profile in the ancient battlefield. Act cautiously and don't be rash. Now that all of you have supreme-grade flying swords, try not to reveal them unless it's a life-and-death situation. There are way too many factions in Tianhuang mainland that are stronger than the Great Zhou dynasty. In the north region of Tianhuang mainland, the Great Zhou dynasty's strength can only be considered as the weakest. Above it, there are some super sections. Above them, there are the legendary immortal sects. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He had once heard Demoness Ji mention that there were 9 top factions in Tianhuang mainland. The 9 top factions did not refer to the 9 sects, but the immortal, fiend and Buddhist sections. Together, there were dozens of sects. For example, the immortal sects had 9 major sects and were known as the 9 immortal sections. As for the fiend sects, there were 7 sects and were known as the 7 fiend sects. Demoness Ji's pure maiden sect was only one of them. In that case, the Great Zhou dynasty was nothing compared to those major factions and sects, let alone Misty Peak. Zimo, especially you, Xian Yi reminded. You have so many supreme-grade spirit weapons on you and even a perfect-grade spirit weapon. Perhaps no one will target you in the capital. However, you have to be extremely careful in the ancient battlefield. You can't even trust your teammates who entered the primordial battlefield with you, Lu Hui reminded again. Su Zimo nodded. A perfect-grade spirit weapon was enough to trigger a bloody battle for perfected being Jin Dan. It was imaginable what would happen if the news of him possessing a perfect-grade spirit weapon was leaked in the ancient battlefield. You guys can go on, Xian Yi waved his hand. If there's a chance to leave Great Zhou and the north region of Tianhuang mainland within this year, it's not bad as well. When they heard that, Su Zimo and the others were shocked. Even though he did not say it explicitly, the meaning behind his words was clear. Su Zimo's group left Mo's spirit weapon workshop and arrived at the depths of the palace under the lead of a capital guard. There was a gigantic and majestic palace here. Everyone entered and the other cultivators of the 4 ranking lists were already present. Apart from the 40 of them, there were 10 other people and Ji Yaoxue was one of them. When Ji Yaoxue saw Su Zimo and the others enter, she smiled and nodded at him. Given the strength of the Great Zhou dynasty, they could send 50 people into the ancient battlefield with each teleportation. Apart from the 40 people of the 4 ranking lists, the Great Zhou dynasty would also select 10 other cultivators to enter the ancient battlefield with the other 4 ranking lists. Apart from Ji Yaoxue, the other 9 people were definitely selected carefully and were powerful. They were also responsible for protecting the 3rd princess. There was an ancient stone formation in the center of the palace. The rectangular stones that formed the stone formation were extremely huge and were half the height of a person. There were mysterious formation patterns etched on them that were complicated and shone faintly. There were also 5 stone pillars erected around the stone formation. At the top of each stone pillar sat a cultivator. Their auras were restrained and their auras were calm. Although one could not tell their cultivation realms, they were probably at nascent soul or even void reversion realm at the very least. Everyone. Right then, the emperor surveyed everyone and spoke slowly. The ancient battlefield is not a good place. There are some living beings of the ancient era living within and some of them are even stronger than ancient remnant beasts and pure-blooded ferocious beasts. Every step in the ancient battlefield is filled with danger and danger. However, there are great opportunities within the dangers as well. Some people enter the ancient battlefield and soar into the skies, becoming famous throughout the world. Some people enter the ancient battlefield and allow their sects to rise and their families to prosper. Of course, there are even more people who die within and do not return alive. This is a test. If you can survive a year, you'll be reborn and truly establish your foundation, becoming a Jin Dan. If you can't, you'll be forgotten regardless of whether you're a monster incarnate or a genius. When he heard that, Su Zimo felt a sense of déjà vu. Back then, Da Yu said something similar the night she threw him into Tsang Lang mountain range alone. That was the truth as well. Under the baptism of blood and the trials of life and death, Su Zimo's cultivation was established with an indestructible foundation. As for the rest, please act according to the circumstances. I hope that the 50 of you who went in will be able to make it back. With that, the emperor bowed towards the 5 cultivators at the top of the 5 stone pillars and said in a deep voice, "Elders, please open the passageway." When they saw that, everyone realized that the cultivation realms of the 5 cultivators should be above the emperor's. There was a high chance that they were already at the void reversion realm. 5 void reversions. That was the foundation of the Great Zhou dynasty. Swoosh! An invisible fluctuation burst forth from the glabellas of the 5 cultivators. It was extremely terrifying, as though it contained an unparalleled heavenly might that was majestic and majestic. Su Zimo had a feeling that if he was struck by that power, he would be smashed into pieces. The moment that thought crossed his mind, Su Zimo's right hand heated up without warning. However, it returned to normal in the blink of an eye. Frowning, Su Zimo glanced at his right hand. He was almost certain that the blood bone in his right hand was left behind for him by Dai Yu. However, Su Zimo did not know what the blood bone was or what it could be used for. Furthermore, Su Zimo had a feeling that given his cultivation realm, he was not qualified to touch the core of the blood bone and could not unleash its true power. The patterns on every single long boulder shone with a mysterious light that grew stronger and clearer. Finally, they gathered together and burst forth. Boom! There was a deafening sound. A series of divine lights lit up around the stone formation, forming a barrier that illuminated the entire palace as though it was daytime. All of you, hurry and enter the formation. A cultivator on the stone pillar shouted. Without hesitation, Su Zimo and the other 50 cultivators passed through the light barrier one after another and entered the stone formation. Break! The 5 cultivators hollered at the same time and specks of light shone from their glabellas. Instantly, the light barrier around the stone formation shone brightly, forming a bedazzling pillar of light that shot into the skies. As though it was piercing through the voids, it revealed a pitch-black tunnel that was deep and cold. A completely different, ancient aura was faintly transmitted through the passageway. A year later, all of you have to arrive at the landing point before you can return to the Great Zhou dynasty. The moment he said that, everyone in the stone formation felt their bodies being torn apart in pain. It was as though they were being pulled away from the spot by an invisible force. The pillar of light on the stone formation gradually dissipated and Su Zimo and the others had already disappeared. The ancient battlefield. Although it was only a shattered world, it was vast and even more vast than the Great Zhou dynasty. Opportunities and dangers coexisted. In a barren land of gravel, space distorted and figures fell out one after another. It was Su Zimo's group. For many Foundation establishment cultivators, they were not used to teleportation as such. Although the entire process was short, it was extremely painful. They felt as though their bodies were being torn apart and their souls were being pulled out of their minds. Feeling dizzy, many cultivators fell to the ground the moment they came out. They could not even stand properly and their faces were pale and wretched. Among them, there were only a handful of people who could maintain their composure. Apart from the 6 Meridian Foundation establishment commander Jiang Yu who had been to the ancient battlefield once, Su Zimo and Night Spirit were the only ones left with frightening physiques. Jiang Yu glanced sideways and looked deeply at Su Zimo without saying anything. Heavens, what rich spirit qi! Is this the ancient battlefield? The density of spirit qi in the ancient battlefield is worlds apart from the outside. Many cultivators took some time to adapt and gradually came to their senses, exclaiming in shock. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and the surrounding spirit qi surged into his body through his 7 orifices and pores. It was incomparably pure and rich as it entered his dantian, condensing into drops of spirit liquid instantly. The spirit liquid formed a river in his meridians that surged and howled. A 4th meridian appeared vaguely. Chapter 338. How terrifying! Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He had only unlocked his 3rd spirit meridian slightly more than 10 days ago. If he were to cultivate normally in Tianhuang mainland, it would take him at least a year to unlock his 4th spirit meridian. To think that Su Zimo's 4th spirit meridian would have already appeared the moment he stepped into the ancient battlefield. Given his cultivation speed, he would be able to unlock his 4th spirit meridian in less than 10 days. Sensing the rich spirit qi in the surroundings, some of the cultivators breathed in greedily with intoxicated expressions, wishing they could cultivate immediately. Standing at the front of the crowd, Jiang Yu turned around and swept his hawk-like gaze across the crowd. With a calm expression, he declared, "Everyone, listen to me." Gradually, everyone's voices died down. Everyone, this is the ancient battlefield. Every step is filled with danger and danger. Pausing for a moment, Jiang Yu glanced at Su Zimo intentionally and said in a deep voice, "No matter what your identity is outside, you have to listen to my orders in the ancient battlefield if you want to survive." When he heard that, Su Zimo frowned. Jiang Yu was the commander appointed by the emperor after all. Furthermore, he was the one with the highest cultivation realm among everyone present, nobody doubted him. Jiang Yu continued, some people, I know that you're quite capable. However, I'm telling you, as long as you act brazenly in the ancient battlefield, you'll definitely die. Don't think that you're amazing just because you can kill someone above your cultivation realm. Some of the disciples of the top sects here can do the same and are even stronger than you. This is what they mean by there's always someone better than you. Although Jiang Yu did not say it explicitly, everyone could tell that he was clearly referring to Su Zimo. Su Zimo lowered his gaze and remained silent. Jiang Yu was clearly hostile towards him. Su Zimo did not know how that hostility came about. It could have come from Ji Yaoxue. It could also have come from Dai Su, who died in his hands. After all, there was a high chance that Dai Su was acquainted with Jiang Yu in the palace. Furthermore, given Dai Su's capabilities, if he did not die in his hands, he would most likely enter the ancient battlefield as well. Su Zimo remained silent. Of course, it wasn't that he was afraid of Jiang Yu. He just couldn't be bothered with him. In this unfamiliar primordial battlefield, there was no need for Su Zimo to attack this person over some animosity. The people from Misty Peak were unhappy, but since Jiang Yu didn't mention any names, they didn't say anything. Ji Yaoxue frowned slightly and shouted softly, Commander Jiang. Jiang Yu glanced sideways and asked, What are your orders, third princess? Suddenly, Su Zimo felt that something was wrong. Even though the emperor had appointed this person as the leader of their group, Ji Yaoxue was still superior to him in terms of status. But now, Su Zimo had a feeling that Jiang Yu was not respectful towards Ji Yaoxue, and there was even a hint of frivolity in his tone. This is very strange. If Jiang Yu had been hostile to him, it would have made sense. However, Jiang Yu's attitude towards Ji Yaoxue was something worth pondering about. Ji Yaoxue did not notice anything amiss and merely reminded, Commander Jiang, let's hurry. We have to find a place to rest before nightfall. Yes. Jiang Yu nodded in response. The ancient battlefield was filled with living beings from the ancient era. At night, beasts and birds roamed the area. If the forest at night was the world of demons, then the night was the world of demons. In that case, the ancient battlefield at night would be the domain of the ancient living beings. Without immense strength, staying outside at night would result in certain death. Typically speaking, there would be massive cities in the depths of the ancient battlefield where many cultivators and experts gathered. However, there were almost no cities at the borders of the ancient battlefield. Jiang Yu withdrew a map from his storage bag and compared it carefully before arriving before Ji Yaoxue. Third princess, we're here. There's a mountain peak closest to here. There's a cave at the foot of the mountain that can be used as a temporary foothold. Yes, let's go there. Ji Yaoxue nodded. This map was drawn by cultivators who had survived the ancient battlefield. Apart from Jiang Yu, no one else had a copy of it. As Ji Yaoxue and Jiang Yu were discussing, Su Zimo turned around and whispered to everyone from Misty Peak, stay by my side later and don't get separated. Night Spirit. Su Zimo patted Night Spirit on the head and pointed to Xiaoning. Night Spirit understood and came to Su Xiaoning's side to protect her along the way. After making those arrangements, Su Zimo was finally relieved. Right then, Jiang Yu arrived before everyone and said in a deep voice, I'll arrange the formation for the journey. The 10 cultivators of the spirit ranking will stand at the periphery. The weaker elixir refinement masters and talisman masters will walk in the middle while the third princess will walk in the innermost. I'll walk in front with the other 8 great Zhou guards to scout the way for everyone. There was nothing wrong with that arrangement, and some of the elixir refinement masters and talisman masters thanked him. Let's go. Waving his hand, Jiang Yu identified the direction and led everyone towards their destination. The surroundings were barren and filled with gravel and strange rocks. There was no greenery at all, and the place was filled with a dead silence that was somewhat depressing. Thankfully, they did not encounter any danger along the way. After walking for about 2 hours, Jiang Yu suddenly paused and exclaimed softly. Out of curiosity, many cultivators looked forward. Not far away, there were pitch-black skeletons on the gravel. There was no flesh at all and they had long withered. After a quick count, there were about a few dozen corpses, each of which had a storage pouch beside them. The eyes of many cultivators lit up. It was clear that those storage bags were ownerless. That was an opportunity. Nobody expected that they would encounter such an opportunity the moment they stepped foot into the ancient battlefield. The 8 great Zhou guards at the front were eager and looked at Jiang Yu instinctively. Jiang Yu nodded, tacitly acknowledging that they could take the storage bags away. The 8 guards took large strides and rushed towards the corpses in front of them. Many cultivators behind them could not hold themselves back either and sprinted forward, wanting to get their hands on a storage bag. Don't go. Right then, Su Zimo frowned and hollered softly. Su Zimo sensed a hint of danger. Furthermore, Night Spirit's reaction confirmed that as well. At that moment, Night Spirit lowered his head slightly and growled to the front, blocking Su Xiaoning. Initially, everyone from Misty Peak wanted to join in the fun as well. However, they paused instinctively when they heard Su Zimo's voice. Although they were puzzled, everyone chose to believe in Su Zimo. However, apart from those from Misty Peak, the other cultivators, including some elixir refinement masters and talisman masters, ran over as well. The only ones who were still standing on the spot were those from Misty Peak, Ji Yaoxue, Junhao of Azure Frost Sect and Jiang Yu. Initially, Junhao of Azure Frost Sect wanted to head forward as well. However, when he caught sight of Jiang Yu standing still, he could not help but frown and a cold glint flashed through his eyes. In the end, he did not head forward. Chapter 339. When he heard Su Zimo's warning, a killing intent flashed through Jiang Yu's eyes with his back facing everyone before fading away. Apart from those from Misty Peak, the other cultivators either ignored it or snorted in disbelief. Almost no one believed it. Frowning slightly, Ji Yaoxue turned around and asked, Zimo, what's wrong? Something's not right. Su Zimo shook his head. These corpses are as black as ink and they died without knowing how they died. In fact, they didn't even have a chance to escape. They must have encountered something extremely terrifying. Fufu. Si Yutong, who was about to step forward, sneered, Su Zimo, aren't you a little too cowardly? You don't even dare to take the ownerless items in the ancient battlefield. I advise you to hide somewhere and cultivate. Don't come out. Su Zimo and perfected being Tsang Lang were like fire and water. As perfected being Tsang Lang's disciple, Si Yutong naturally would not be nice to Su Zimo. Pausing for a moment, Si Yutong turned around and smiled at Ji Yaoxue, saying confidently, fellow Taoist Yaoxue, you don't have to worry. I'm certain that there's no danger ahead. Look at those corpses, there's no flesh at all. This means that these cultivators have been dead for at least 10 years and their flesh has long rotted. There's no danger at all. In truth, that was also the reason why many cultivators dared to step forward. Since these cultivators had been dead for so long, they would have long left even if there was any danger and would not linger here for so long. Dead for more than 10 years. Su Zimo's gaze flickered as he shook his head. Not necessarily. By then, the cultivators at the front had already arrived beside the corpses. Although the great Zhou guard at the front was excited, he was still cautious and did not venture in recklessly. Instead, he picked up a storage bag beside a corpse at the side. He paused for a moment. There was no danger. The guard opened the bag of holding and looked inside. His eyes lit up, and he quickly put the bag of holding into his own bag of holding. Then he rushed inside and began to pick up the other bags of holding. When the other cultivators saw that, they did not hesitate and charged towards the corpses as well. Suddenly, the sand beside one of the corpses moved, and a fist-sized bump gradually appeared. It grew bigger and bigger, as if something was about to break out of the sand. In the blink of an eye, more and more of these bumps appeared on the sand, attracting the attention of many cultivators. The alert cultivators had already activated their flying swords and soared into the sky. Puff! A crisp sound rang out. A huge black and red ball suddenly broke out of the sand and fell at the feet of the cultivators. Before the crowd could react, the black and red balls dispersed, turning into red-headed, black-bodied, barefooted insects. They crawled towards the feet of the cultivators. Each worm was as long as an arm and had 1,000 legs. They slithered on the sand at an extremely fast speed and instantly crawled to the feet of the cultivators. Ah! 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 Screams of agony rose one after another. Under countless gazes, a black fog suddenly appeared on the faces of the cultivators. Their eyes bulged out like dead fish, and they were extremely frightened. The blood vessels under their skin gradually bulged and could be seen clearly. Suddenly, they exploded. Blood centipedes. Su Zimo's expression changed slightly. Previously, in order to find out about the origin of the night spirit, he had browsed through many books about ancient living beings in Misty Peak and recognized this extremely ferocious living being. Blood centipedes were living beings of the ancient era. They lived in groups and were extremely venomous. With a single bite, they could turn a person's flesh into a pool of blood and devour them in groups. Within a few breaths, they could devour a person until only a corpse was left. Because the blood centipedes were extremely venomous, their corpses were black in color. It was said that they had long gone extinct in Tianhuang mainland. To think that they would appear again in the ancient battlefield. It's an ancient blood centipede. Hurry, retreat. Right then, Jiang Yu exclaimed and turned around hurriedly, arriving beside Ji Yaoxue. His eyes flashed with a hint of panic, as though he was extremely fearful as he panted. Third princess, hurry and leave. Don't linger here. Even as the princess of Great Zhou, she was so frightened that her face turned pale when she saw this turn of events. She pointed at the chaotic crowd with a pained expression. We can't save them. If we linger here, we'll die as well. Jiang Yu shouted. In that short period of time, many cultivators had already died. Their flesh was gone, leaving only pitch-black corpses behind. Their storage bags fell to the side, looking exactly the same as the corpses they saw initially. The 4 great Zhou guards at the front were all dead and none of them survived. Some of the cultivators at the back managed to avoid the calamity. However, some of them were scared silly and stood rooted to the spot. A cultivator at the front turned around with a horrified expression. Reaching out, he grabbed the shoulder of a weapon refinement master in front of him and begged, "Save me, poof." His words came to a stop as the person who spoke turned into a blood mist, splattering pus all over the weapon refinement master's face. That person shuddered in fright. When he snapped out of his stupor, he shrieked and turned to flee. However, he had only taken a few steps when he paused in his tracks. A black mist surged from his face and he turned into pus as well. His corpse fell to the ground and a swarm of blood centipedes pounced on him, drowning him instantly. Pust. When they saw that, some of the surviving cultivators gasped and their pupils constricted. The poison was so terrifying that even if one was not bitten by the blood centipedes, a few drops of pus from a cultivator's body was enough to poison a Foundation establishment cultivator to death. Ji Yaoxue realized that there was no way to save the cultivators bitten by the blood centipedes. If they tried to save them forcefully, they would die here as well. Si Yutang was so scared that his face turned pale and he felt a sense of trepidation. Thankfully, he was able to argue with Su Zimo and was able to escape slowly. Let's go this way. Everyone, ride on your swords. Blood centipedes can't fly. Jiang Yu called out and rode his sword into the air, leading Ji Yaoxue and the remaining cultivators in a certain direction. The remaining cultivators were already in a panic as they instinctively summoned their flying swords and soared into the air, escaping with Jiang Yu. The situation was chaotic. Among everyone present, Su Zimo was the only one who could maintain his composure as he sprinted on the ground with Night Spirit, following closely behind everyone. Although they were already far away from the corpse area, Su Zimo's sense of danger had not dissipated. Instead, it was getting heavier. "Everyone, watch out." Before Su Zimo could finish his sentence, there was a loud boom. The sand in front of them suddenly collapsed, forming a gigantic pit. A gigantic and menacing head popped out of the pit and moved its 1,000 legs. Half of its body was raised and it faced everyone with an extremely terrifying aura. A pair of fangs that emitted a foul stench let out a clanging sound when it bit down. Its bloodshot eyes were like two blazing suns with a murderous aura. This was an incomparably gigantic blood centipede. Even the half of its body that was exposed was 100 feet long. "Ah!" everyone exclaimed. Although the blood centipede did not know how to fly, the half of its body that was raised was 100 feet tall and blocked everyone's path instantly. There were pursuers ahead and obstructions behind. Chapter 340. Against this massive creature that was blocking their path, two cultivators' eyes shone with madness as they tried to circle around the blood centipede and continue escaping. Swash! Swash! The blood centipede swayed the two feelers on its head like two pitch-black whips that tore through the void with a foul stench, reeling the two cultivators back instantly. "Ah! Ah!" The two of them let out tragic cries and turned into a puddle of blood within a few breaths, devoured by the blood centipede. "Go to the side." Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and pointed in another direction, hollering. Without hesitation, everyone from Misty Peak turned their swords and sped in that direction. Many cultivators followed instinctively as well. Swash! A black shadow flashed by and a cultivator who was flying on his sword in midair was swept away by the blood centipede's feelers, dying tragically in the mouth of the blood centipede. It was way too fast. Since cultivators were flying on their swords, they were not agile in midair and could not avoid the blood centipede's feelers. Every time the black shadow flashed by, a cultivator would definitely die on the spot. The blood centipede's massive body popped out from the ground. It was more than 200 feet long and its massive body was unusually agile. Clang! 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 Swash! The blood centipede's feelers swung over once more and the sound of air tearing could be heard. Another black shadow flashed by and swept towards Ji Yaoxue who was in midair. Two great Zhou guards made a prompt decision and turned around, shielding Ji Yaoxue. They summoned two flying swords decisively and slashed at the black shadow in midair. Buzz! Spirit lights shone brightly on the swords, both of them were superior-grade flying swords. Furthermore, the two great Zhou guards who attacked were at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment as well. Clang! The two flying swords stood on the black shadow and actually emitted a series of metallic sounds. The black shadow was merely the feeler of the blood centipede and should be a relatively weaker part of its body. However, even a superior-grade flying sword released by a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator could not cut through it. The two superior-grade flying swords were sent flying on the spot and fell into the distance. The swords were pitch black and lusterless. They were already useless. Seeing this scene, the crowd's expressions all changed. Creak, creak, creak. Faced with the counterattack, the blood centipede let out an ear-piercing shriek. Its ferocious nature became even more ferocious. Its eyes shone with a scarlet light as it charged forward even faster. The blood centipede's other feeler pierced through the air, emitting a soul-stirring sound. At that moment, the two great Zhou guards had just released their flying swords. They could not dodge the incoming black shadow because the Princess of Great Zhou was right behind them. The two of them touched their storage pouches and crushed a protective talisman each. Then, they took out two shields and placed them in front of them. Despair flashed in their eyes. Just now, the two of them realized that they couldn't withstand the power of this blood centipede at all. Just the venom on its tentacles alone was enough to kill them. Su Zimo's gaze turned cold as he stomped on the ground and leaped into the air with a boom. In midair, a gigantic blood-colored saber was already in his hands. It was the perfect grade spirit weapon, Blood Quencher. Against this ferocious creature of the ancient era, Su Zimo did not dare to hold back. Channeling his power of bloodline and spirit energy at the same time, rumbling thunder and tsunamis could be heard from his body in a terrifying manner. 5 spirit patterns shone on Blood Quencher and shone brightly, shrouding it in a layer of blood light. Slash! Blood Quencher tore through the air and turned into a streak of blood light, colliding heavily against the incoming black shadow. Poof! Blood light spewed out and splattered through the voids. The feeler of the blood centipede could not withstand the sharpness of Blood Quencher and was sliced into 2. Groar! Severely injured, the blood centipede shrieked tragically in pain. Half of its feeler was as thick as an arm and it swayed wildly in midair, spewing out endless black blood. Blood gushed out almost the moment Blood Quencher severed the feeler. Su Zimo could not dodge in time and was covered in poisonous blood. When they saw that, everyone from Misty Peak felt their hearts sink as they realized that things were bad. Brother! Su Xiaoning's body swayed and she felt a wave of dizziness, nearly falling from midair. Thankfully, Leng Ro caught her in time. Ah! Ji Yaoshua cried out in shock, her face turning ghastly pale. It was over. Even the pus and blood of cultivators bitten by those small blood centipedes could poison a living Foundation establishment cultivator to death, let alone the venomous blood of this massive creature. Third Princess, hurry and leave. When Jiang Yu saw Ji Yaoshua standing motionlessly in midair and refusing to leave, he urged her hurriedly. Jiang Yu continued, Su Zimo is already a dead man. Third Princess, there's no use for you to stay here. Zimo, Ji Yaoshua called out softly with a pained expression. Xiaoning, Yaoshua, you guys leave first. I'm fine. Just as everyone thought that Su Zimo was dead for sure, Su Zimo's voice sounded. It sounded no different from before. Even in such a situation, there was no hint of panic in his voice and everyone could calm down subconsciously. He wasn't dead. At that moment, many cultivators gradually realized that something was amiss. Under normal circumstances, anyone who came into contact with the venomous blood of the blood centipede would turn into a puddle of pus within a few breaths, leaving behind a corpse. But now, more than 10 breaths had passed and Su Zimo was still standing on the spot. Although his back was facing everyone, there was nothing wrong with him. Poison immunity. Those were the words that flashed through everyone's minds. In reality, Su Zimo was shocked the moment he was splashed with the venomous blood of the blood centipede as well. He could clearly feel that a stream of extremely destructive blood had entered his body, as if it could destroy all life force. However, the moment the venomous blood seeped in, his bloodline circulated on its own and surged through his body like a tidal wave, washing away the venomous blood over and over again. Lightning blazed with the strongest righteousness that could cleanse all evil. Not only that, Su Zimo had even eaten a dragon before. The bloodlines of dragons were extremely noble and terrifying. How could an ancient blood centipede compare to them? Be it the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, the Void Thunder Manual or the essence of a divine dragon, any one of them was enough to suppress and devour the venomous blood of the blood centipede. Furthermore, Su Zimo possessed all 3 of those terrifying powers. Within a few breaths, the venomous blood failed to injure Su Zimo. Instead, it was washed away by his bloodline and the venomous blood dissipated into nothingness. Right now, it was not an exaggeration to say that Su Zimo was invulnerable to poison. Swoosh! 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 Not far away, a swarm of blood centipedes was already swarming in their direction. At a single glance, they were densely packed and the ground was filled with a reddish-black color that sent chills down one's spine. If it was just a single blood centipede, no matter how massive and menacing it was, Su Zimo might not necessarily retreat. However, there was no guarantee that nothing would happen if he was surrounded by a swarm of blood centipedes. Furthermore, this was the ancient battlefield after all, and danger lurked everywhere. If he was trapped here, there was a high chance that he would attract even more terrifying and powerful ancient living beings. This was not a place he could stay for long. Su Zimo turned to leave and put away Blood Quencher. Instead, he drew out a gigantic bow that had 4 spirit patterns shining on it. Without even looking, he shot an arrow. Naturally, a single arrow would not be able to kill the blood centipede queen. However, it could stop it in its tracks. Chapter 341. Everyone fled in a panic while Su Zimo stayed at the back to block the attacks of the blood centipedes. In reality, the moment the blood centipede king appeared, Night Spirit's eyes shone with a murderous glint. In fact, he even had the intention to turn around and fight the blood centipede king. However, Su Zimo did not want to be entangled with these poisonous creatures and gestured for Night Spirit to protect Xiaoning. Of course, the most important thing was that Su Zimo was worried about another person. Jiang Yu. Logically speaking, Su Zimo should not be suspicious since this was a commander appointed by the Emperor of Great Zhou. However, after this interaction, Su Zimo was certain that there was something wrong with this person. Su Zimo sprinted on the ground. Not far ahead, 2 huge bumps appeared under the sand as well. Another group of blood centipedes was about to break out of the sand. Night Spirit was the first to leap and stomped on it with his gigantic feet. 5 claws reached out silently and grabbed with force. Poof! The blood centipedes wriggled together and formed a reddish-black ball that was crushed by Night Spirit the moment it appeared. Poisonous blood splattered all over Night Spirit. However, Night Spirit was oblivious to it as he shuddered and continued sprinting forward. That terrifying poisonous blood could not hurt Night Spirit at all. Behind everyone was a reddish-black ocean that seemed to have ripples as countless blood centipedes wriggled over. After suffering once, the blood centipede king did not dare to wave its antennae recklessly anymore. Each time it wanted to charge forward, it would be forced back by Su Zimo's arrow. One chased while the other fled. After almost half a day, a patch of emerald green finally appeared before them. In the barren desert, this patch of green represented life and everyone was invigorated. When they flew above the grassland, the wriggling reddish-black ocean behind them gradually stopped as well. Blood centipedes lived in the desert all year round and would not leave easily. The blood centipede queen stood at the edge of the desert. It raised half of its body and moved its 1,000 legs. It roared loudly in Su Zimo's direction. Its scarlet eyes were filled with unwillingness. Seeing this scene, everyone gradually slowed down. In the end, they withdrew their flying swords and landed on the ground. They gasped for breath and were in a state of shock. Along the way, everyone's spiritual energy had been severely depleted and was almost dried up. If they continued to fly like this, they wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Ji Yaoshue counted in the crowd. Her eyes dimmed and she sighed softly. In less than a day after entering the ancient battlefield, there were only slightly more than 10 people left from the original 50-man team. The cultivators on the pill ranking and weapon ranking had the lowest cultivation realms, so most of them did not manage to escape. Apart from Jiang Yu and the other 5 great Zhou guards, Su Zimo and his sister, and Misty Peak, there were only a few people left. They were in low spirits and looked miserable. The primordial battlefield was actually so cruel. Initially, most of the cultivators were filled with hope and had the intention of exploring the place. In fact, they even fantasized about obtaining meridian unlocking elixirs, connate spirit weapons and inheritances of lost sects, but now, some of the cultivators were scared out of their wits after everything that they had just experienced. Other than Jiang Yu, even the remaining guards of the great Zhou dynasty faintly revealed a trace of fear and unease in their eyes. Why don't we find a place to settle down and cultivate for a year? Let's not go out anymore, a female cultivator said timidly. More than half of the cultivators had died in less than a day. With a year left, who would be able to return alive if they were to wander outside? That's right, Si Yutang coughed gently. The spirit qi in the ancient battlefield is so rich. Even if we cultivate here for a year, this trip won't be in vain. With that said, he looked at the calm and seemingly indifferent Su Zimo and chuckled dryly. If there's anyone who doesn't know what's good for them and still wants to head out, go ahead. Don't expect us to follow you. To begin with, cultivation was something that defied the heavens and was fraught with thorns at every step. One would definitely encounter countless dangers along the way. If one were to cower in the face of such setbacks, their future accomplishments would be limited. Ignoring Si Yutang, Su Zimo swept his gaze across the crowd and understood. Among the remaining people, those from Misty Peak, Shi Jian, Jun Hao, and the others were rather frightened as well. However, there was no fear in their eyes and their gazes were resolute. Jiang Yu said in a deep voice, "We don't have many people left to begin with. Everyone, don't split up and act on your own. Let's stick to our original plan and stay in that cave for the night. Commander Jiang, should we rest for a while to recover our stamina and spirit energy?" Someone suggested. No. Jiang Yu rejected without hesitation. Time is of the essence. Let's hurry on our way and get there before nightfall. Jiang Yu called out again and identified the direction before leading the group forward. Ji Yaoxue slowed down and came to Su Zimo's side, asking with a worried expression, "Zimo, are you all right?" No matter what, she had witnessed the poisonous blood of the blood centipede splattering on Su Zimo's body. She was still worried that the poisonous blood would cause harm to Su Zimo. "I'm fine," Su Zimo shook his head and whispered, "There's something wrong with Jiang Yu. You have to be careful." Ji Yaoxue froze for a moment and frowned with a confused expression. Although we suffered heavy losses this time round, it was an accident after all and we can't blame Jiang Yu entirely. Furthermore, he came to the ancient battlefield 10 years ago and returned alive. He's the commander appointed by Father. There shouldn't be any problems, right? It's precisely because he came to the ancient battlefield that there's a problem. Su Zimo said, given his experience, there's no way he couldn't tell that those corpses were dangerous. However, he tacitly allowed the others to pick up the storage bags beside the corpses. Furthermore, pausing for a moment, Su Zimo continued, after discovering the corpses, he did not go forward. Intelligent as Ji Yaoxue was, she also realized that something was amiss. Su Zimo said in a low voice, "In fact, I suspect that he's intentionally sending everyone in the group to their deaths so as to weaken the strength of the group. But what's his motive for doing that? What benefits does it have for him?" Ji Yaoxue could not understand. Su Zimo shook his head. "I don't know about that. Should we join forces to subdue him and interrogate him?" The moment Ji Yaoxue said that, she shook her head and rejected herself. Frowning, she said, "No, we're all exhausted and in bad states. Furthermore, Jiang Yu's cultivation realm is the highest. Even if we join forces, we won't be able to subdue him." Ji Yaoxue suddenly realized a terrifying fact. If there was something wrong with Jiang Yu, no one would be a match for him given his 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivation realm. "If you agree, I'll subdue him." Right then, Su Zimo's voice sounded with a calm tone. However, for some reason, that voice and that statement calmed Ji Yaoxue's initially uneasy heart. Chapter 342. Although Ji Yaoxue still did not believe that Su Zimo could suppress a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, she felt an indescribable sense of security when she heard those words. It was the same feeling she had back in Sung Lang mountain range. Suddenly, Ji Yaoxue seemed to have thought of something as a blush appeared on her cheeks, making her look flawless. Just as she was letting her imagination run wild, Su Zimo's voice sounded once more, "Someone's coming." "Ah." Snapping out of her daze, Ji Yaoxue followed Su Zimo's gaze and looked ahead. However, she did not see anyone. Just as she was feeling puzzled, Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and his gaze flickered. Suddenly, he raised his voice. "Everyone, stop in your tracks. There's a group of cultivators speeding over with a menacing aura. They don't have good intentions. Everyone, be careful." The moment he said that, a commotion broke out in the crowd. They had 50 cultivators on this trip, and now that they had suffered heavy losses, they were left with more than 10 exhausted cultivators. If the intruders had ill intentions, there was a high chance that they would be in deep trouble. Jiang Yu walked at the front with his back facing Su Zimo as a cold killing intent flashed through his eyes. There's no one. Many cultivators looked ahead nervously. However, they did not see anything and it was empty. All of a sudden, the sound of clothes fluttering through the air could be heard from the front. Initially, it was inaudible, but gradually, it became clearer and clearer. Before long, many figures appeared on the horizon and were speeding over at an extremely fast speed. "Commander Jiang, what should we do? Are they targeting us?" a cultivator asked softly with a fearful expression. Jiang Yu did not answer, but the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a cold smile. There were more than 50 cultivators on the other side and they arrived in the blink of an eye. A few great Zhou guards were shocked and exclaimed, "Great Shang Dynasty." Everyone's hearts sank when they heard those words. Jun Hao frowned, seemingly surprised. Ji Yaoxue's expression turned extremely terrible as well. The northern region of Tianhuang region had 4 dynasties, Great Xia, Great Shang, Great Zhou, and Great Yu. Wars broke out at the borders every year, and the 4 dynasties were like fire and water. Under such circumstances, encountering the cultivators of the Great Shang dynasty was equivalent to announcing their death sentence. Su Zimo's gaze fell on Jiang Yu. His heart skipped a beat as he vaguely understood something. The timing of the appearance of the cultivators of the Great Shang dynasty was way too perfect. It was when they were at their weakest. Furthermore, the cultivators of the Great Shang dynasty had accurately located them in less than a day, as if someone was guiding them. It made no sense at all. But if Jiang Yu was from the Shang dynasty, then everything would make sense. He had purposely lured them to the place where the corpses were. He wanted to use the blood centipedes to weaken their strength. After escaping, Jiang Yu refused to give them any time to rest. They continued to run until their spirit energy was almost depleted and they were at their weakest. That was when the Great Shang dynasty appeared. Everything was so logical and flawless. "I am Duan Mingda of the Great Shang dynasty. I heard that the 3rd princess of the Great Zhou dynasty is here and I'm here to invite her to be a guest of the Great Shang dynasty." Although he said that it was a guest, in reality, he wanted to kidnap Ji Yaoxue by force. The person who spoke was dressed in brocade robes and looked at Ji Yaoxue smugly. Thereafter, Duan Mingda swept his gaze across the others and a cruel smile appeared on his lips as he said coldly, "As for the others, kill without mercy. Prepare for battle." Ji Yaoxue took a deep breath of air and made a prompt decision. "I, Ji Yaoxue, would rather die in battle than be captured. Cultivators of the Great Shang dynasty, you've underestimated me." At that moment, the gentleness on Ji Yaoxue's face was gone. Instead, there was a hint of bloodlust and killing intent in her eyes. Ji Yaoxue glanced sideways and whispered, "Zimo, kill your way out later. Escape as far as you can. Don't worry about me." Su Zimo raised his brows slightly and did not say anything. Afraid that Su Zimo could not see the situation clearly, Ji Yaoxue continued, "The person they want to capture is me and I can only die with them. However, it's different for you guys. You guys still have a chance of survival. Zimo, promise me that you'll return alive and tell father about what happened today." Fufu. Right then, a cold laugh sounded. Jiang Yu took a few steps forward and turned around, looking at Ji Yaoxue and Su Zimo mockingly as he shook his head. "It's too late. Third princess, none of you will be able to escape today. Jiang Yu, you're indeed a traitor. Ji Yaoshua's expression turned cold. Everyone else from the Great Zhou dynasty was stunned on the spot and could not react for a moment. Commander Jiang, why are you? Even the Great Zhou guards could not believe what was happening and asked instinctively. Duan Mingda chuckled. Fellow Daoist Jiang, you've done a great job for us to capture the Great Zhou dynasty and even capture a princess. That's right. Another great Shang cultivator smiled and nodded. Fellow Daoist Jiang, His Majesty will definitely reward you handsomely for your meritorious service. Your future is limitless. It's over, it's over. Si Yutang's face was ashen as he murmured repeatedly as though his parents had died. Everyone else had terrible expressions as well. Initially, Jiang Yu was their only hope as a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. But now, this 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator had joined the Great Shang Dynasty's camp. Jiang Yu's next sentence made everyone's mood plummet to the bottom of the valley. Ji Yaoshua, I advise you to give up. Apart from me, Brother Mingda is also a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. The remaining dozen of you won't be able to escape even if you have wings. Everyone was shocked. 2 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. After Jiang Yu stood opposite them, Ji Qingtian and the other 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators were the ones with the highest cultivation realms among the remaining dozen of them. Even together, they were not a match for a single 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. Furthermore, everyone was exhausted and their combat strength was reduced. Ji Yaoshua asked slowly, Jiang Yu, the Ji family has treated you well. Why are you repaying our kindness with ingratitude? Jiang Yu replied, Indeed, the Ji family has not mistreated me in any way. Chapter 343. Jiang Yu's expression changed as he said hurriedly, This woman is clearly trying to sow discord. Fellow Taoists of the Great Shang Dynasty, please don't fall for it. Everyone could tell that Ji Yaoshua was indeed trying to sow discord. However, the powerful thing about that statement was that even if the people of the Great Shang Dynasty did not fall for it, it would be difficult for Jiang Yu to gain the trust of the Great Shang Dynasty in the future. In fact, there was a high chance that he would be suspected and killed. Duan Mingda pondered for a moment before smiling. Fellow Daoist Jiang Yu, there's no need to worry. Why would we suspect you when you've contributed greatly? That's right. Let's kill this group of Great Zhou cultivators first. That's the most important thing right now, another cultivator said. Right then, Duan Mingda's expression changed as he glanced sideways towards the distant horizon. Someone was coming. A group of about 60 cultivators sped over with a murderous aura and arrived before them in the blink of an eye. The Great Xia Dynasty. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Su Zimo swept his gaze and could not help but frown when he noticed the shock and fear in the eyes of Duan Mingda and the others. By the looks of it, the Great Shang and Great Xia Dynasty did not exchange information. But now, the cultivators of the Great Xia Dynasty were following closely after the Great Shang Dynasty. Su Zimo did not believe that there could be such a coincidence in this world. There must be something fishy about this. As the cultivators of the Great Xia Dynasty arrived, they formed a tripartite situation and the situation became delicate. Right now, Great Zhou was the weakest while Great Xia and Great Zhou were evenly matched. However, Great Xia and Great Zhou were wary of each other and were in a stalemate, worried that the other party would reap the benefits. Furthermore, the arrival of the Great Xia Dynasty was truly strange. If Jiang Yu was the mole who lured the cultivators of the Great Shang Dynasty here, who was the one who lured the cultivators of the Great Xia Dynasty here? Could it really be a coincidence? Ji Yaoshua's gaze flickered as she suddenly raised her voice. Fellow Taoists of the capital of Great Xia, I'm the Princess of Great Zhou. May I know who the commander of this expedition is? In the Great Xia camp, the leader was clad in metal armor and had a cold expression. He asked in a deep voice, I'm Gui. What can I do for you, Princess of Great Zhou? Fellow Taoist Gua, on behalf of Great Zhou, I'm willing to join forces with Great Xia to wipe out all the cultivators of the Great Shang dynasty. Ji Yaoshue said. Furthermore, the Great Zhou dynasty did not take a single item from the interspatial pouch that was seized. It was all for the sake of killing this Great Zhou traitor. The moment he said that, the expressions of Duan Mingda and the other Great Shang cultivators changed. Even though Great Zhou only had a dozen cultivators left, they would definitely be a threat if they joined forces with Great Xia. The situation started to become disadvantageous for the Great Shang dynasty. Chuckling softly, Duan Mingda eased the tense atmosphere and raised his voice. Fellow Taoist Gui, the remaining dozens of people in the capital of Great Zhou are already spent and there's nothing to fear. Ji Yaoshua's goal is to make both of us suffer. Fellow Taoists of the Great Xia dynasty, please don't be fooled. Gui of the Great Xia dynasty remained silent as he swept his gaze across Su Zimo and the others. No one knew what he was thinking. A moment later, Gui suddenly said, why don't we join forces and kill the cultivators of Great Zhou first? As for the spoils of war, our two dynasties can split them equally. Of course. When they heard that, the eyes of Duan Mingda and the others lit up as they agreed without hesitation. The hearts of Ji Yaoshue and the others sank to rock bottom. A single Great Shang dynasty was enough to wipe them out, let alone two dynasties joining forces. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Guiyi's decision was delayed by half a beat, as though he had only said those words after receiving some sort of order. The timing of the Great Xia dynasty's arrival coupled with Guiyi's reaction meant that Su Zimo was almost certain that there was a mole from the Great Xia dynasty among the remaining dozens of people. Furthermore, there was a high chance that the mole's status in the Great Xia dynasty was even higher than Guiyi's. Earlier on, the mole had used a special method to transmit a message, causing Guiyi to make the decision to join forces with the Great Shang dynasty. Su Zimo was expressionless as he swept his gaze across the remaining Great Zhou cultivators. Finally, he paused briefly on someone's face before retracting his gaze. Jun Hao of Azure Frost Sect. When they heard that the Great Shang and Great Xia dynasties were joining forces, the Great Zhou cultivators were sorrowful, indignant, enraged and disheartened. However, Jun Hao was the only one. His expression was way too calm. He was so calm that it was as though he was not worried about his own safety at all. Gui, Duan Mingda and the others were still discussing how to split the spoils of war when Su Zimo looked up at the skies and walked over leisurely. Zimo. Brother. Ji Yaoshue and the others were shocked and shouted instinctively. As though he did not hear anything, Su Zimo came to a spot not far away from Gui and Duan Mingda and asked indifferently, it's getting late. Are you guys done discussing? That man is the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou at 3 Meridian Foundation establishment. Not only does he have 18 supreme grade flying swords, he also has a perfect grade spirit weapon, Blood Quencher. Jiang Yu said darkly. The cultivators of the Great Shang and Great Xia factions were in an uproar as they looked at Su Zimo with burning gazes, as though they wanted to skin him alive. A perfect grade spirit weapon? Are you serious? Duan Mingda narrowed his eyes and glared at Jiang Yu, asking word by word. Absolutely. Jiang Yu nodded. That blood quencher was refined by him personally in front of everyone during the sect competition of the Great Zhou dynasty. Duan Mingda turned to Gui and said with a fake smile, Brother Gua, how should we split this perfect grade spirit weapon? A perfect grade spirit weapon was enough to trigger a bloody battle between perfected being Jin Dan. Be it Great Shang or Great Xia, neither of them would give it up easily. Gui raised his brows slightly and asked instead, what do you suggest, Brother Duan? I do have a suggestion. Right then, Su Zimo suddenly spoke. Oh, what? Duan Mingda and Gui turned around and looked at Su Zimo calmly, not concealing the mockery and ridicule in their eyes. In their eyes, Su Zimo was a fish on the chopping block right now, waiting to be slaughtered. You want blood quencher? Suddenly, Su Zimo's voice paused as he stomped heavily on the ground. There was a loud boom and the ground quaked. In a flash, Su Zimo dashed forward and a deafening sound echoed from his body. Thunder rumbled and his blood surged like a tsunami. The roars of tigers and leopards were mixed together in a frightening manner. Take it. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already closed in. His voice was thunderous as he spoke the first word. At the same time, a gigantic and thick blood-colored saber appeared in his hands. Buzz! 5 spirit patterns shone on the saber in a bedazzling manner. Like a blood sun, it emitted a faint blood stench and a torrential killing intent. The cultivators from both Great Shang and Great Xia factions were shocked. Duan Mingda and the others who were facing Su Zimo felt a torrential aura surging towards them that they could not defend against. Life! Su Zimo swung his arm and blood quencher drew a perfect arc in midair. It shone with a boundless blood glow and had a terrifying aura. Come! It was already too late to dodge. Without hesitation, Duan Mingda took out a protection talisman and crushed it on the spot. Before he could do anything else, blood quencher had already descended from the skies. Exchange. If you want blood quencher, exchange it with your life. As Su Zimo's final word was spoken, Duan Mingda's body was sliced into 2 by blood quencher with a loud thud. Blood mist spewed out and even the protection talisman could not save his life. A 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was killed in a single slash. Chapter 344. The cultivators of the 3 dynasties did not expect Su Zimo to attack at all and neither did they expect Su Zimo to attack. Coupled with the fact that they were too close and Duan Mingda knew nothing about Su Zimo, he was almost defenseless. Despite being a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, he was sliced into 2 by Su Zimo and died on the spot. The crowd exploded instantly. Kill! Kill him! The cultivators of the Great Shang dynasty were enraged and roared with bloodshot eyes. Jiang Yu had witnessed Su Zimo's methods before. The moment Duan Mingda died, he summoned a flying sword and soared into the air right away, distancing himself from Su Zimo. However, the other cultivators were unaware and remained on the spot, summoning flying swords that shone with spirit lights. Conjuring hand seals, they were prepared to attack at the same time to kill Su Zimo on the spot. Bang! After killing Duan Mingda, Su Zimo did not stop and charged into the crowd. The cultivator at the front had just summoned his flying sword when his vision turned dark and he was sent flying. The man's body exploded in mid-air and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Pust! Seeing this, all the cultivators sucked in a breath of cold air. A simple collision was enough to split a cultivator into pieces. What sort of terrifying power was that? He was like an ancient ferocious beast. After devouring a divine dragon, Su Zimo had already attained greater mastery of the organ's refinement section. Every single punch or kick of his had the force of 5,000 kilograms and the bodies of ordinary cultivators could not defend against him at all. The moment he sent someone flying, Su Zimo spun blood quencher and slashed horizontally. Poof! Blood flashed and a gigantic head flew into the air. Fresh blood spewed out from the severed neck in a ghastly manner. Blood quencher was a blood-red saber to begin with. After seeing blood, the blood glow on its blade intensified and became more blinding. Everyone, watch out! That person is extremely strong in melee combat. Don't let him get close to you. Jiang Yu stood on his flying sword and hollered in midair. The remaining Great Shang cultivators turned pale and wanted to curse out loud. What was the point of saying that now? Their commander for this expedition, the 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator Duan Mingda, was already dead. With Su Zimo charging into the crowd, many cultivators were slashed by blood quencher before they could even soar into the air. Even without Blood Quencher, Su Zimo had closed in on them and the odds were stacked against them. Furthermore, now that Su Zimo had the perfect spirit weapon, Blood Quencher, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. Even without using his full strength, ordinary 4 or 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators would not be able to withstand the might of a single slash from the massive and heavy saber. Sudden thunder. Su Zimo pointed forward and shouted. Crack! A loud sound came from the sky, and a bolt of lightning as thick as an arm fell in an instant, smashing into the crowd and transforming into a blazing sea of lightning. Many cultivators channeled their spirit techniques to fight against it. Seizing the opportunity, Su Zimo charged into the crowd once more. Darting left and right, wherever his saber pointed, people would fall and limbs would fly everywhere, no one could stop him. The great Shang cultivators at the edge soared into the air on their flying swords one after another, summoning their flying swords and pointing them at Su Zimo. Swoosh! 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 Instantly, spirit lights flashed and filled the skies. One after another, streaks of rainbow light tore through the air, as though there were thousands of rays of light. Su Zimo lowered his body and sprawled on the ground, slithering through the grass at an extremely fast speed like a snake. The grass swayed and left a trail of tracks. Su Zimo's figure was faintly discernible as he managed to dodge most of the flying swords. Mud splattered behind Su Zimo, they were all traces left behind by the flying swords. There were still more than 10 flying swords that chased after him relentlessly. Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he suddenly stood up. Channeling his bloodline, a tsunami rumbled within his body endlessly. Crackle! As his bloodline surged, his bones and tendons trembled and his tendons buzzed. Su Zimo's entire body expanded. Break! Su Zimo hollered and gripped Blood Quencher tightly with both hands. The flesh on his arms expanded and intertwined, causing his sleeves to burst. Exerting strength with his 2 thick bare arms, he raised Blood Quencher and slashed at the dozens of flying swords that were thrusting at him. Cling! Clang! A series of metallic sounds echoed. Right in front of countless gazes, the dozen or so superior-grade flying swords were sliced into 2 by Blood Quencher. Their lights dimmed as they fell to the ground. Ah! A series of exclamations sounded from the Great Zhou and Great Xia factions. It was way too savage. This was a complete suppression in terms of strength and there was no way to resist at all. Su Zimo was way too fast and decisive. In just 10 breaths, more than 10 great Shang cultivators died to Blood Quencher, including a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. Everyone from Great Xia froze on the spot with a hint of fear in their eyes. However, Ji Yaoshue and the others felt their morale surge when they saw that. Ji Yaoshue raised her arm and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, this is a moment of life and death. Let's kill the enemy and the traitors. Kill! Kill! Kill!" Everyone from Misty Peak, the 4 great Zhou guards and Shijian felt invigorated and their blood surged as they roared and charged forward. Night Spirit surveyed his surroundings with a cold gaze but did not attack, following beside Su Xiaoning the entire time. 7-star plum. Purple light slash. Duality smoke sword. Many spirit arts collided in midair as the Great Zhou and Great Xia dynasties finally clashed. Little Fatty rode on his sword but wielded a gigantic axe in his hands, cooperating well with Shijian and Shijian of Southern Mountains sect. The 4 great Zhou guards guarded Ji Yaoshue tightly and did not dare to leave her side, merely using their flying swords to deal with the enemy. Explode! Len Rou hollered softly and flicked her sleeves, tossing more than 10 talismans into the crowd. Instantly, they exploded, creating a gigantic sea of flames that drowned the few cultivators. Although Len Rou was only at 3 Meridian Foundation establishment and did not have a high cultivation realm, her attainments in talismans were indeed impressive. She wouldn't have been able to obtain the number 1 spot on the talisman ranking otherwise. Even Su Zimo was unwilling to take her on head-on when she tossed out a bunch of talismans the moment she attacked. Ah! 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 Although the few great Shang cultivators did not die on the spot, they were severely injured and their flesh was burnt into a bloody mess as they shrieked repeatedly in the sea of flames. Shoo! Shoo! Misty Peak's Ji Ching Tian spread his ethereal wings and wielded his Void Realm flying sword, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. One after another, faint ripples passed through the sea of flames and killed the few screaming great Shang cultivators. In the blink of an eye, the situation was reversed. Great Zhou had the upper hand and their aura was domineering. In reality, there was still a strong faction that did not interfere on the battlefield. Right from the beginning, many cultivators of the Great Xia dynasty were watching coldly from the sidelines. Gui Yi's gaze was fixed on a Great Zhou cultivator the entire time. Right then, in the chaotic battlefield, Azure Frost Sect's Jun Hao glanced sideways in the direction of the Great Xia dynasty and made a few hand gestures. Those hand gestures were extremely subtle and apart from Gui Yi, no one else noticed them. Understanding his intentions, Gui Yi raised his arm and shouted, "Attack! Encircle the remnants of the Great Zhou dynasty." Chapter 345. Buzz. Su Zimo was in the midst of a massacre when he suddenly heard the hum of a sword. He felt a sharp pain at the back of his head and a sense of danger flashed through his mind. The sword was extremely fast and sharp, it was definitely a threat to him. A 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator had attacked. Clang! Before he could turn back to look, Su Zimo swung his saber in reverse and slashed heavily against the incoming flying sword. There was an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing and sparks flying everywhere. The power of that sword was extremely strong and Su Zimo's body shuddered as killing intent surged in his eyes. There was only a single person who could attack him from this angle, the traitor of the Great Zhou dynasty, Jiang Yu. Su Zimo shifted sideways and dodged a few flying swords. Suddenly, he spun around and glared at Jiang Yu who was not far away in midair, barking coldly, "You have a death wish. Everyone, don't panic. As long as we distance ourselves, there's nothing to be afraid of." Jiang Yu declared, "I'll hold him back. All of you, work together and kill him." "You?" Su Zimo sneered and ignored the incoming flying swords and spirit arts. Stomping heavily on the ground, he soared into the skies like a streak of light. In midair, Su Zimo conjured hand seals and a pair of gigantic wings suddenly extended from his back, surging with spirit light in a lifelike manner. It was one of the 3 great secret skills of Misty Peak, ethereal wings. With ethereal wings, Su Zimo could fly in the air like perfected Jean Dan without the use of any external objects. His combat strength in midair was no different from when he was on the ground. Swoosh! Flapping his wings, Su Zimo's figure flashed and brushed past one of the great Shang cultivators. A streak of blood appeared on that person's neck as blood spewed out. He fell from the flying sword and was already dead. Jiang Yu's eyelids twitched wildly. Even though he was a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator and was 3 cultivation realms higher than Su Zimo, his sword kinesis flight speed could not compare to Su Zimo who had ethereal wings. In other words, Jiang Yu could only fight it out with Su Zimo to see who was stronger. Water Moon Wheel. Jiang Yu formed a hand seal and madly circulated his spirit energy. A full moon with rippling blue waves formed in front of him. It exuded a chilling murderous intent and crushed forward. Break! Su Zimo's bloodline surged as the power of thunder and lightning gathered in his palm, forming a long spear that flickered with lightning. He threw it at the full moon ahead. Boom! The 2 types of spirit techniques collided with each other, resulting in a loud explosion. Lightning spiritual energy surged, bursting out into an oval-shaped energy halo. Layers upon layers of multicolored light illuminated half the sky. They were evenly matched. From the beginning to the end, Su Zimo did not stop at all. In the blink of an eye, he was already 100 feet away from Jiang Yu. Go! Seeing that his spirit art was ineffective, Jiang Yu hurriedly controlled his flying sword and pointed forward. The sword trembled and turned into a streak of light, piercing towards Su Zimo's face. At the same time, Jiang Yu rode his flying sword and retreated backwards. His sword was not meant to injure Su Zimo. Instead, he wanted Su Zimo to fight it head-on. That way, Su Zimo's speed would definitely decrease and the two of them would maintain a safe distance. No matter how strong Su Zimo was in melee combat, he would not be able to injure Jiang Yu. The flying sword released by a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was extremely fast to begin with. Coupled with the fact that Su Zimo was charging towards Jiang Yu at full speed, the sword arrived almost instantly. If it was anyone else, it would be difficult for them to dodge that sword. Even if they did not die, they would definitely be injured. However, Su Zimo possessed spirit perception and sensed it the moment Jiang Yu attacked. Furthermore, when he noticed Jiang Yu's actions, Su Zimo saw through the latter's intentions right away. Against the incoming flying sword, Su Zimo did not dodge nor did he use Blood Quencher. Instead, he extended his jade-white palm. His arm was like an elephant's trunk, soft yet powerful. His palm was like a bull's tongue as it rested softly on the flying sword, coiling and vibrating. Clang! A shuddering sound echoed from the sword. It was as though the sword was almost destroyed by some immense external force. The spirit light on the sword dimmed and Su Zimo tossed it aside casually. When he saw that, Jiang Yu's expression changed and his pupils constricted. He had long known that Su Zimo's melee combat strength was terrifying and his physique was strong. However, he had not expected it to be this frightening. To think that Su Zimo would be able to withstand the sharpness of a superior-grade flying sword with just his body alone. Only spirit demons at peak Foundation establishment realm or pure-blooded ferocious beasts could possess a physique as such, right? How could a 3 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator possess such a strong physique? Although that exchange took a long time to describe, it actually happened in the blink of an eye. Reaching out, Su Zimo tossed the flying sword away with a coil and vibration. Flapping his wings, he did not slow down at all and was already within 10 feet of Jiang Yu. At this distance, Jiang Yu was already a dead man in Su Zimo's eyes. If he was up against the fiend heir of Overlord Palace, Peng Yu, who was equally adept in melee combat and had an unparalleled physique, Su Zimo might not have the confidence to kill him. However, this cultivator of the great Zhou dynasty was dead for sure. Ah! Jiang Yu was alarmed. Seeing that he could not escape, he hurriedly withdrew a piece of armor from his storage bag and wore it on his arms. It was a pair of steel bracers. Injecting spirit energy into them, the bracers shone with 3 spirit lights. They were superior-grade defensive spirit weapons. Su Zimo's gaze was sharp as he strode forward. Blood Quencher in his hands vibrated and buzzed. Take my slash! Su Zimo swung his arms and without any moves, Blood Quencher drew a perfect arc in midair. Descending from the skies, it slashed down with a terrifying might and immense might. Jiang Yu's face was frighteningly pale as he raised his arms instinctively. The bracers shone brightly above his head. Clang! There was a deafening sound. Jiang Yu's body shuddered and he lost his footing, almost falling off the flying sword. His arms trembled uncontrollably as blood oozed from the corner of his mouth. All right, again! Su Zimo roared in laughter. The moment Blood Quencher was raised, it slashed down once more. Clang! Jiang Yu's arms were nearly sliced apart by the slash. The sharpness of Blood Quencher was almost on his scalp and the blood stench of the blade almost suffocated him. The spirit lights on the bracers flickered. After 2 consecutive slashes from Blood Quencher, the superior-grade spirit weapon was on the verge of being scrapped. Die! Su Zimo spat out coldly. The moment he said that, Blood Quencher descended once more, slashing heavily on Jiang Yu's arms. Crack! 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 The sound of bones cracking could be heard from within the bracers. Immediately after, Jiang Yu's vision darkened as he spat out a mouthful of blood and his arms drooped down. Blood Quencher descended and its cold blade sliced through Jiang Yu's head, causing a wound to appear. Shing! Jiang Yu's body was cut in two. His internal organs and blood spilled out, falling down together with the flying sword under his feet. Another 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator had died to Blood Quencher. Chapter 346. Shu. 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 In midair, flying swords shuttled through the crowd one after another like streaks of light. The sound of spirit arts clashing could be heard and the battlefield was in chaos. The main reason why Great Zhou was able to turn the tables and suppress the Great Shang dynasty in terms of momentum was because Su Zimo was at the front and killed Duan Mingda, attracting most of the Great Shang dynasty's attention. In reality, Ji Yaoxue and the others had just escaped from the blood centipede and were exhausted from the long journey. With the addition of the Great Xia dynasty, Ji Yaoxue and the others were in a precarious situation. The 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator of the Great Xia dynasty, Gui Yi, targeted Misty Peak Ji Qingtian right away. After all, Ji Qingtian was a 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator and was proficient in the 3 secret skills of Misty Peak. His movements were agile and his sword techniques were agile, he was rather troublesome. The moment Gui Yi attacked, he released spirit arts and flying swords in a torrential attack, wanting to kill Ji Qingtian as soon as possible. Swash! A streak of light streaked through the air, piercing towards Ji Qingtian who was in midair. Gui Yi's sword-wielding technique was brilliant and coupled with his rich spirit energy, his flying sword was extremely fast and was not inferior to Ji Qingtian who had cultivated ethereal sword. Ji Qingtian's expression changed. If he was in peak condition, he could definitely try to dodge that sword with ethereal wings. But now, by the time he sensed the sharpness of the sword chi, it was already too late for him to dodge. He could only wave his sleeves and turn his sword to block the incoming streak of light. Clang! 2 flying swords appeared and wrestled with each other. The blades of the swords clashed and slid slowly, producing a teeth-numbing sound and a stream of sparks. Ji Qingtian's flying sword was a supreme-grade flying sword given to him by Su Zimo. However, in terms of cultivation realm, he was weaker than Gui Yi. Coupled with his weak stamina, he would definitely be at a disadvantage in this clash. However, Gui Yi's flying sword was a little strange and was different from ordinary flying swords, it was a 3-pronged sword. The 3-pronged sword had 2 notches that could clamp down on flying swords, sabers and other weapons. At that moment, Ji Qingtian's flying sword was locked down by Gui Yi's 3-pronged sword. It buzzed and quivered but could not break free. Hee hee. Gui Yi sneered. 6 spiritual veins were faintly discernible under his clothes. His spiritual energy surged like a river and suddenly erupted. With a clang, Ji Qingtian's supreme-grade flying sword was sent flying by Gui Yi's 3-pronged sword and landed on the ground not far away. The 3-pronged sword stabbed forward. In a hurry, Ji Qingtian flapped his ethereal wings and dodged to the side. However, he was still half a step too late. With a puff, a deep wound appeared on his shoulder, blood gushing out. The misty wings on his back were also pierced by the sword, shattering on the spot. Bang! Ji Qingtian fell heavily to the ground and broke out in cold sweat from the pain. He gritted his teeth and grunted. Senior brother Ji. Little Fatty and the others exclaimed. Whoosh! The 3-pronged sword chased after Ji Qingtian's head. Ah! Little Fatty angrily roared and got rid of the cultivator next to him. He swung his huge axe and heavily chopped down on the 3-pronged sword. Clang! The 3-pronged sword shone brightly with spirit light and trembled, sending the gigantic axe flying. Little Fatty was only at 3 Meridian Foundation establishment and was 3 cultivation realms lower than Gui Yi. There was no way he was a match for Gui Yi in terms of strength. If not for the fact that he had been tempering his body all year round, the gigantic axe would have been sent flying from his hands. Even so, the web between Little Fatty's thumb and index finger was still torn and dripping with blood. Swash! A few talismans landed in front of Ji Qingtian and suddenly shattered, forming layers of barriers. Leng Ro had seized the opportunity to throw out a few protection talismans. Crack! 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 The three-pronged sword pierced through a few barriers before coming to a stop. Ji Qingtian took the opportunity to leave the place and was temporarily out of danger. I don't have many talismans left, Leng Ro whispered. Apart from Su Xiaoning, the remaining cultivators of the Great Zhou dynasty were all injured. Surrounded by the Great Xia dynasty, they were already at their limits. Right at this moment, 3 loud bangs resounded from the sky not far away. Many cultivators turned towards the sound instinctively and saw yet another 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, Jiang Yu, falling from the skies after being slain by Su Zimo. Pust! The expressions of all the cultivators present changed. Duan Mingda's death could only be blamed on his carelessness. However, Jiang Yu's death was enough to prove Su Zimo's strength. The fact that a 3 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator could kill 2 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators consecutively was not a simple coincidence. In midair, Su Zimo sensed the change in the situation and turned around slowly, sweeping his cold gaze across the battlefield. Great Xia dynasty, you guys truly have a death wish. Before his sentence was finished, Su Zimo had already charged over with his gigantic scarlet blood quencher, charging straight into the Great Xia dynasty's camp. Instantly, the crowd burst into an uproar. After killing 2 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators consecutively, Su Zimo's aura was torrential and his killing intent was almost corporeal. Who would dare to take him head-on with a thick stench of blood? No one dared to look into his deep eyes. Bang! A Great Xia cultivator who was standing in midair on his flying sword could not dodge in time and was sent flying by Su Zimo, dying on the spot before he could even make a sound. In almost the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already arrived before Gui Yi. Swoosh! Blood quencher descended from the skies, its gigantic blade seemingly wanting to rip the voids apart with an unstoppable momentum. Gui Yi's expression was terrible as he waved his hands, controlling his 3-pronged sword to block the blade. Clang! The sword and saber clashed and the gap of the 3-pronged sword clamped down on blood quencher. Gui Yi's eyes lit up as he channeled his spirit energy furiously. His 6 spirit meridians shone with endless spirit light and his dantian was already aching. As long as I can send blood quencher flying, this Su Zimo is nothing to be afraid of. In Gui Yi's opinion, the main reason why Su Zimo was able to release such terrifying combat strength was definitely because of that perfect-grade spirit weapon. Let go! Gui Yi hollered. Let go! Su Zimo scoffed coldly and his bloodline rumbled. Channeling his spirit energy, the 5 spirit patterns on his saber shone with a divine light and a blood beam burst forth, resembling a blood sun that shone with a resplendent light. Clang! Clang! Against the suppression of blood quencher, the 3-pronged sword could collapse at any moment as the spirit light on it flickered. Shatter! Su Zimo howled and twisted his arm, causing the saber to vibrate. Crack! Crack! The 3-pronged sword let out a tragic cry as cracks appeared on its body and it shattered on the spot. Gui Yi was scared out of his wits. His liver and guts were torn apart as he hurriedly retreated. His gaze drifted and landed on a cultivator from Great Zhou. When Jun Hao saw that, his pupils constricted as well. He had miscalculated. Su Zimo's terror had far exceeded his expectations. If this man did not die, they would definitely suffer a crushing defeat this time round. Even if they could escape, they would be severely injured and would not be able to fight for treasures with the other factions in the ancient battlefield. Although Su Zimo was strong, Junhao felt that any human would definitely have a weakness. As long as he could find his Ming men, he would be able to deal a fatal blow. Narrowing his gaze, Junhao swept his gaze towards Su Xiaoning at the side and his eyes flickered. Chapter 347. Hiding in the crowd, Junhao gestured in the direction of the Great Xia dynasty before pointing to Su Xiaoning beside him. Within the Great Xia dynasty, 10 armored cultivators understood and exchanged glances, nodding their heads secretly. The 10 of them spread out and mixed into the crowd. 5 of them wore light armor and controlled flying swords to release spirit arts to attract the attention of the others. The other 5 cultivators wore heavy armor and were armed to the teeth, just their armor alone weighed more than 1,000 kilograms. On the ground, it was obvious that the 5 of them were body-tempering cultivators. Wielding sharp sabers in their hands, they split into different directions and approached Su Xiaoning silently. In midair, Su Zimo swung Blood Quencher and charged into the crowd. In the blink of an eye, he cut down all the cultivators in front of him, carving out a path of blood. Even 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators could not defend against a single slash from Su Zimo. Throughout the entire process, Su Zimo's gaze was fixed on Gui Yi. This was the only 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator on the battlefield. Once this person died, the rest would collapse without a fight. Some of the Great Xia cultivators were behaving strangely. Su Zimo glanced at them indifferently and ignored them, continuing to chase after Gui Yi with his saber. At the same time, Gui Yi could sense Su Zimo's killing intent. He knew that he was definitely not a match for Su Zimo in a one-on-one fight. However, it was not as though he had no chance of victory. His only chance lay in the Great Zhou dynasty's camp, that woman who was only at mid-stage Foundation establishment. If that woman was in danger, Su Zimo would definitely be flustered and reveal an opening. It would be easy for Gui Yi to take advantage of that and kill him on the spot. If he could capture that woman alive, the situation would be even simpler. At that thought, Gui Yi took a deep breath of air and calmed himself down, a look of determination flashing through his eyes. It was a matter of who was faster. If Su Zimo killed him first, he would have nothing to say. However, if that mid-stage Foundation establishment female cultivator fell into their hands first, Su Zimo would definitely die and the Great Zhou dynasty would suffer a crushing defeat. In Gui Yi's eyes, the woman was already a caged bird. The Great Zhou cultivators around her had all been drawn away, leaving only a black wolf-like demonic beast that was nothing to be afraid of. Come on. Gui Yi made up his mind and stopped dodging. He took out a protective talisman from his storage bag and crushed it on the spot. At the same time, Gui Yi took out a glittering glass mirror and placed it above his head. Whoosh! Blood Quencher slashed out cleanly without any fancy moves. Gui Yi's expression was solemn. His fingertips surged out streams of spiritual energy and injected them into the glazed treasure mirror. The colored glazed treasured mirror rapidly expanded like a dome of heaven. It was bright and dazzling, and it enveloped Gui Yi's head. Clang! When Blood Quencher struck the glass mirror, it let out a reverberating sound that resembled a bell in an ancient temple. With the help of the glazed treasure mirror, Gui Yi temporarily blocked the saber. However, his body still trembled violently, and the protective talismans around him collapsed on the spot. It was only at this moment that Gui Yi truly experienced the terrifying power released by Su Zimo's slash. Before Gui Yi could catch his breath, a second slash descended. A blood beam descended, almost ripping the dome of heaven apart. Gui Yi's face was drained of blood. Glancing around, he noticed something happening on the other side of the battlefield and his eyes were filled with ecstasy. They had attacked. The 5 Great Xia cultivators had already attacked. Ha 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 ha. Su Zimo, turn around and take a look. Your sister is about to die. Gui Yi laughed loudly and his facial features were already contorted. Immediately after, his laughter came to an abrupt stop as his heart sank. Su Zimo's blood quencher did not pause for a single moment. Su Zimo's expression was calm and Gui Yi could not see any hint of panic or worry in his deep eyes. In fact, Su Zimo did not even turn around. How could this be? What went wrong? Instinctively, Gui Yi looked at the other side of the battlefield. The next moment, his eyes widened in horror, as though he had seen the most terrifying thing in the world. His mouth was agape but he could not say a single word, as though someone was choking him. The 5 great Xia cultivators in heavy armor had already surrounded Su Xiaoning and were less than 10 feet away from her, arriving instantly. Instinctively, the 5 of them looked at the demon beast beside Su Xiaoning. The pitch-black demon beast was covered in cold scales that were indestructible. Its tail was like a steel whip with a shimmering spike at the end. It looked extraordinary. However, in reality, the demon beast had been by the woman's side since the beginning of the battle and had not attacked at all. Right now, it was sprawled on the ground motionlessly for a long time. Its eyes were half closed and it looked lazy, as though it had fallen asleep. The 5 of them swept their gazes across the demon beast. Jun Hao nodded subtly. Attack! One of them shouted softly. The 5 of them split into different directions and charged forward at the same time, arriving before Su Xiaoning in a few steps. When Jun Hao saw that from the side, he pretended to be shocked and exclaimed, "Watch out!" In reality, even the cultivators closest to Su Xiaoning would not be able to save her in time. A smug look flashed through Jun Hao's eyes. All of a sudden, Night Spirit, who was initially sprawled beside Su Xiaoning, opened its eyes, emitting 2 cold and dark glints. The temperature of the entire battlefield seemed to have dropped significantly. Night Spirit stood up and leaped, reaching out with its front claws to grab the 2 incoming cultivators. Sharp claws extended from the gaps of its fingers silently, shimmering with a sharp glint and emitting a cold aura. A malevolent aura surged over, suffocating them. Night Spirit was way too fast. The 2 of them merely felt their vision blur and one of them had his throat crushed, dying on the spot with blood gushing out. The other person's helmeted head had 5 holes gouged out by Night Spirit's claws. Brain juice flowed out and his eyes dimmed as he fell limply to the ground. A black shadow streaked through the voids. Like a spirit snake in the dark night, it coiled around a cultivator's neck and tightened its grip. Crack! 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 That person's throat was shattered on the spot. Immediately after, the black shadow continued darting through the air. Poof! One of the cultivator's chest was pierced by something that resembled a steel whip. A cold glint shot out from his back and swayed slightly. It was Night Spirit's tail. Heavy armor and steel protective equipment were like paper against Night Spirit's claws and fangs, unable to withstand a single blow. Snap! At the same time, Night Spirit opened its bloody mouth and lunged forward, biting down on the 5th cultivator's throat. Swinging its head gently, it snapped the cultivator's neck and fresh blood gushed out. Everything happened too quickly. From the moment Night Spirit attacked until now, it took less than a breath's time. Furthermore, it was done almost at the same time. Even Su Zimo could not do that. Every single part of Night Spirit's body was born to kill. In the blink of an eye, 5 great Xia cultivators were dead. All of them died with grievances and widened eyes filled with confusion. Even at the moment of their deaths, they did not know what they had experienced. The fact that Night Spirit killed 5 great Xia cultivators meant that he had lost his final chance of survival. Su Zimo followed closely behind and chopped off Gui Yi's head with a casual slash. At this point in the battle, all 3 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators were dead. The cultivators of Great Xia and Great Shang were defeated instantly and shrieked as they fled in all directions. With ethereal wings, Su Zimo streaked through the air and killed many people consecutively with a blood beam. Just now, he stopped. The cultivators of the two dynasties fled in different directions and it was impossible to kill all of them. Furthermore, it would take too long to chase after them. This was the ancient battlefield after all and it was already late. Su Zimo was worried that something else might happen. This chaotic battle between the three great dynasties finally ended with the defeat of the Great Xia and Great Shang dynasties. Although Great Zhou won, it was a Pyrrhic victory. Initially, Ji Yaoshue had 4 Great Zhou guards with her. Just now, they lost another 2 in this battle. Right now, there were only the Su Zimo siblings, Misty Peak's Ji Qingtian, Leng Rou, and Little Fatty, Ji Yaoshue and 2 Great Zhou guards, Azure Frost Sect's Junhao, Southern Mountain Sect's Shijian and Iridescent Clouds Palace's Si Yutong, a total of 11 people. Of course, there was also Night Spirit. Among the 11 of them, apart from the Su Zimo siblings, Ji Yaoshue and Junhao, the other 7 cultivators were covered in blood and injured. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, "Everyone, pack up and leave this place as soon as possible." "That's easy for you to say. How can we move?" Si Yutong grumbled, "We're all injured and in pain. Our spirit energy is depleted and there's no way we can use sword kinesis flight." Su Zimo swept his gaze. Suddenly, Si Yutong recalled the methods of the person before him and could not help but shudder. He was so frightened that he shut his mouth and kept quiet. Ji Yaoshue said softly, "Zimo, why don't we rest here for a while?" "No." Su Zimo shook his head. "So many people died in this battle and the stench of blood will definitely attract many ancient living beings. We can't stay here for long." After living in Songlang mountain range for a year, Su Zimo was clear about the rules there. However, the ancient battlefield was 10 times crueler than Songlang mountain range. When they heard that, everyone's hearts skipped a beat. They could not help but recall the scene of them bumping into the blood centipede in the desert and revealed fearful expressions. Su Zimo continued, "It's almost evening now. If we can't find a place to rest before nightfall, there's a high chance that we'll be surrounded by many ancient living beings. What should we do then?" As the skies gradually darkened, many cultivators began to feel uneasy and fearful without any ideas. Before entering the primordial battlefield, many seniors had repeatedly warned them that at night in the primordial battlefield, birds and beasts would roam freely. Countless terrifying existences and living beings from the primordial era would appear. They were told not to linger in the wilderness or they would definitely die. Su Zimo pondered for a moment before moving to collect the storage bags of the other 2 dynasties. Su Zimo would open every single storage bag to take a look. He was in a hurry to leave earlier on and now he's collecting the spoils of war. Si Yutong could not help but mutter softly. Little Fatty said coldly, "Si Yutong, don't forget that you would have died a long time ago if not for my brother." Ji Yaoshue nodded as well. "It's only right that all the storage bags belong to Zimo." Pausing for a moment, Ji Yaoshue continued, "However, I have a feeling that Zimo is looking for something." Right then, Su Zimo's eyes lit up as he withdrew an exquisite spirit vessel from a storage bag. Injecting spirit energy, the spirit vessel expanded instantly and hovered in front of everyone. "Let's go and board this spirit vessel. We'll leave this place first." Su Zimo waved his hand. Everyone was enlightened when they saw the spirit vessel. They exchanged glances and looked at Su Zimo with gratitude, as though a burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Chapter 349. At the borders of the ancient battlefield. In midair, a spirit light streaked through at an extremely fast speed. If one focused their gaze, they would be able to vaguely make out 10 cultivators and a demon beast seated on the spirit vessel. There was also a green-robed cultivator standing at the bow of the vessel, steering it forward. That green-robed cultivator was none other than Su Zimo. On the spirit vessel, the injured cultivators had already bandaged their wounds and changed into clean Taoist robes. However, their faces were still pale and they could not hide their fatigue and weakness. Everyone looked at the green-robed cultivators standing at the front with a myriad of emotions. It could be said that if not for Su Zimo, all of them would have died in this expedition to the ancient battlefield. Right now, none of them even had the strength to use sword kinesis flight. However, Su Zimo was still able to control the flying spirit vessel even after killing 3-6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. Everyone was shocked by his immense stamina. There was even a hint of fear in the depths of Jun Hao's eyes. Before long, the spirit vessel stopped at the foot of a mountain. Su Zimo leaped down and arrived at a cave at the foot of the mountain according to the map. It was rather spacious and could be used as a temporary resting place. After everyone entered the cave, Su Zimo began setting up formations at the entrance of the cave. Everyone was injured and although their bleeding had stopped, the stench of blood was still emitted. Many living beings of the ancient era were extremely sensitive to such auras and would definitely come looking for them. Therefore, Su Zimo had to set up a few simple formations at the entrance of the cave to isolate the aura and sound within. Coupled with a concealment formation, it was only safe. They were all support formations that were relatively simple and Su Zimo was done setting them up by nightfall. Ji Yaoshua walked over and said, "Zimo, let's take turns keeping watch tonight." "That's right, bro. You can rest tonight and we'll take turns keeping watch." "Don't worry," little fatty patted his chest and promised loudly. Throughout the entire process, none of them were of much help. Feeling embarrassed, they wanted to help Su Zimo share some of the burden. "No need." Su Zimo waved his hand and said, "You guys should quickly recuperate and recover your strength. Night Spirit will stand guard here." At the mention of Night Spirit, fear flashed in everyone's eyes. Although Night Spirit's attack during the battle during the day was brief, it was still too shocking. If Su Zimo gave off an unfathomable feeling, then Night Spirit only gave off one emotion, fear. Nightfall. Today, everyone had experienced too much. They were both physically and mentally exhausted. When they finally managed to relax, most of them had already fallen asleep. The Night Spirit got up and quietly walked out of the cave. His figure disappeared into the darkness. Su Zimo was not worried about Night Spirit. Night Spirit's current strength was equivalent to the peak of the Foundation establishment realm. Furthermore, this was the edge of the ancient mountain battlefield, so there was nothing that could threaten it. Su Zimo sat quietly in the cave, sorting out today's harvest. There was a total of more than 60 storage bags. Although there were no supreme-grade spirit weapons, there was a considerable number of superior-grade spirit weapons. Furthermore, there were quite a number of elixirs. Su Zimo picked through them and kept the perfect-grade elixirs for his own consumption. He put the rest together. After sorting out everything, Su Zimo took out a few maps that he obtained and compared them. A fragrance wafted over as Ji Yaoshua came beside Su Zimo and sat down. "Why? Can't sleep?" Su Zimo glanced sideways and asked softly. In the darkness, Ji Yaoshua pursed her lips and said softly, "Zimo, thank you, for today." "It's fine." Su Zimo smiled. When she saw Su Zimo's smile, Ji Yaoshua relaxed and asked curiously, "What are you looking at?" "You came at the right time. Do you know of any clues to the ancient ruins?" Su Zimo asked. Entering the ancient battlefield to cultivate was only one aspect. The most important thing was to obtain the Meridian unlocking elixir, other treasures and inheritances. And these things could only exist in the remains of the ancient battlefield. "No." Ji Yaoshua shook her head. Most of the ruins at the borders of the ancient battlefield have been scoured clean and there are very few that haven't been discovered. "Take a look at this." Su Zimo opened the maps in his hands and placed them in front of Ji Yaoshua. He pointed to a red dot on the map and said, "This location is highlighted on these maps. I suspect that this is the ancient ruin that the Great Shang and Great Xia discovered. Indeed. Ji Yaoxue picked up the maps and compared them before nodding. Ji Yaoxue was a little tempted. However, a look of worry flashed through her eyes. We don't have many people right now. This ruin will definitely attract many factions and cultivators to fight for it. There might be a fierce battle ahead. It's fine, Su Zimo smiled gently. There aren't any strong major sects or top cultivators at the borders of the ancient battlefield. Furthermore, the Great Shang and Great Xia dynasties have already been defeated by us and are no longer a threat. When do we set off then? Ji Yaoxue asked, 10 days later. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, in the next 10 days, recuperate from your injuries, consolidate your cultivation realms and adjust your states before setting off. The two of them chatted for a while more before Ji Yaoxue returned to rest under Su Zimo's urging. Su Zimo's gaze shifted to Jun Hao, who was in the crowd. Su Zimo could vaguely sense that there was something wrong with Jun Hao. However, he did not have any evidence and could not kill the latter just because of his odd expression. However, Su Zimo was certain that one of the remaining people was a spy of the Great Xia dynasty with a high status. Su Zimo retracted his gaze and smiled calmly. No matter who the spy was, he would not dare to act rashly after today. In the face of absolute power, those petty tricks were nothing more than jokes. Late at night, a dark shadow walked in from outside the cave. It was silent and did not alert anyone. Sensing something, Su Zimo opened his eyes and glanced at Night Spirit. He caught a familiar scent of blood on Night Spirit. It was the aura of the Blood Centipede Queen. In the past 6 hours, Night Spirit had returned to the desert and killed the Blood Centipede Queen. Su Zimo could not help but laugh. He was the only one who could guess Night Spirit's thoughts. During the day, Night Spirit was protecting Su Xiaoning and could not go too far. It could only be chased by a group of blood centipedes and was probably filled with anger. At night, Su Zimo guarded the place while Night Spirit went to kill the Blood Centipede Queen. Su Zimo stood up and nodded to Night Spirit. The man and beast had a tacit understanding. Night Spirit returned and guarded the cave while Su Zimo left. Due to the soundproof formation, the cave was completely silent. The moment he left the cave, Su Zimo heard the roars of ferocious beasts and the chirping of birds. The ground shook, the ancient trees swayed and the grass rustled. It was as though some terrifying existence was approaching. It was horrifying. It was a completely different world inside and outside the cave. Despite being in such an environment, Su Zimo did not have any fear in his eyes. Instead, he was excited and there was an aura within his body that was restless. At night, the world of ancient demon beasts. It was also Su Zimo's world. That was because from a certain perspective, Su Zimo was a demon. Chapter 350. After many years of cultivation, Su Zimo had already developed a habit of cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness at night. Su Zimo had already attained greater mastery of the organs refinement section and had been cultivating the orifice clearing section for a while now. Orifice clearing referred to the opening of the 7 orifices on the head. For most races, the head was the most mysterious, important and sensitive part of the body. Once the head was severely injured, most people would die. Legend has it that there was a purple palace, heavenly palace and immortal platform in the head. Even the so-called essence spirit of the immortal Tao dermic formulations and the Yin spirit of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness were located in the depths of the head. However, Su Zimo had yet to come into contact with them given his current cultivation realm. The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness would only begin cultivating the head after cultivating the skin, flesh, tendons, bones, marrow and organs. That was also the reason why the head was so important. The 7 orifices on the head referred to the eyes, ears, nose, mouth and tongue. The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness had to be cultivated step by step without any mistakes. If the organs were not in harmony, the orifices would not be opened. The orifices would only be opened after organs refinement. Organs refinement would allow one to cultivate the essence chi of the organs, which was also known as demonic chi. Since the organs were connected to the orifices, demonic chi would naturally reach them as well. The liver of the organs corresponded to the eyes, the kidneys to the ears, the lungs to the nose, the spleen to the mouth and the heart to the tongue. In other words, the vital essence of the 5 viscera and liver flowed through the eyes, the vital essence of the kidneys flowed through the ears, the vital essence of the lungs flowed through the nose, the vital essence of the spleen flowed through the mouth, and the vital essence of the heart flowed through the tongue. Nurturing demonic chi and opening the orifices would result in lesser mastery of the orifice clearing section, and one would be able to see the entire world. Before that, the skin, flesh, tendons, marrow and marrow corresponded to the organs and formed a minor cycle in the body. After opening the 7 orifices, the skin, flesh, tendons, marrow, organs and orifices would connect and form a major cycle. At that point, greater mastery of the orifice clearing section would be achieved. At that point in his cultivation, it meant that he could form a demon inner core. Opening the orifices not only meant strengthening the 5 senses such as hearing and eyesight, but also because the 7 orifices were connected to the skin, flesh, tendons, bones, marrow, and the 5 viscera, one's physical strength would also be improved. Moreover, after the aperture clearing process was completed, the great circulatory cycle would be formed in his body. Su Zimo's entire body would become even more harmonious and perfect. His body could be as agile as a swallow, as heavy as a bear, and he could be both agile and steady. He could be as quiet as a maiden and as agile as a fleeing rabbit. Every movement he made would gather the strength of his entire body and cause his strength to rise greatly. At the end of the orifice clearing chapter, Daiyu left a sentence. At this point in my cultivation, I've reached perfection. I've cultivated the ability to see the heavens and hear the earth. With the help of my spiritual sense, I can sense danger and avoid it. Regardless of whether you are walking, sitting, or lying down, if you have a feeling in your heart, you can pounce on your enemy within a zhang and kill him with your strength. Every time he saw Daiyu's words, Su Zimo felt his blood boil. The hidden meaning of this sentence was actually 4 words, invincible within 10 feet. Furthermore, Su Zimo also believed that the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness possessed such power. Although he had yet to attain greater mastery of the orifice clearing chapter, if Su Zimo did not conceal his demonic cultivation and released his blood chi in a fight, there were truly not many cultivators who could match him within 10 feet. Su Zimo arrived at the slope above the cave and consumed a perfect-grade blood-flesh elixir. He assumed a lotus position and closed his eyes. As he breathed in and out, thick demonic chi gushed out from his nose and mouth, gathering around his body. Before entering the ancient battlefield, Su Zimo had already unlocked 4 of his 7 orifices, his ears, tongue, and nose orifices. Right now, he was starting to cultivate his mouth orifice. For demon beasts such as the heaven spirit lizard and spirit assimilation frog, their tongues were the strongest killing weapons in their bodies and could kill their enemies with a single breath. Naturally, cultivating their tongue orifice would increase their strength tremendously. Su Zimo was a human after all, and unlocking his ears, nose, and tongue orifices did not increase his combat strength significantly. However, it was different for his mouth orifice. Su Zimo had cultivated a sound secret skill before, thunderclap kill. Although it was incomplete, Su Zimo's breathing was long and his lungs were strong. Once he unlocked his nose and mouth orifices, the power of thunderclap kill would increase once more. This was a true killing move and also Su Zimo's trump card. Demonic chi surged into the air within the cave with a frightening aura. If anyone were to witness this, they would definitely be shocked to discover that a faint human figure was seated amidst the thick and pure demonic chi. At the periphery of the ancient battlefield, there were almost no ancient living beings or demon beasts that could injure the night spirit. Naturally, there were few that could injure Su Zimo as well. When they sensed the strong demonic chi on the mountain, many demon beasts chose to avoid it one after another. After a night, not a single demon beast appeared in the vicinity of the cave. As the sun rose, Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and the rumbling demonic chi returned to his body through his nose and mouth. Opening his eyes, Su Zimo stood up and moved his body. His tendons and bones rang out in unison with a series of crackling sounds. The skies were bright. By the time Su Zimo returned to the cave, Ji Yaoshue and the others had already woken up. I've informed the others of our decision. We'll set off 10 days later, Ji Yaoshue stepped forward and said. Yes, Su Zimo nodded. Many cultivators ate something casually and made use of the time to cultivate. It was the same for Su Zimo. The moment he stepped into the ancient battlefield yesterday, he sensed the faint appearance of his fourth spirit meridian. Coupled with the fact that he had just undergone a huge battle, he should be able to unlock his fourth spirit meridian completely within a couple of days. During this period of time, Si Yutong went out for a stroll. When he returned, he said in a serious manner, the location of this cave is truly hidden. There aren't even any traces of birds or beasts in the vicinity after a single night. Most people did not feel anything when they heard that. However, a few of them looked at Su Zimo thoughtfully. For the next few days, Su Zimo continued to head out at night to cultivate his mouth orifice. During the day, he stayed in the cave to absorb spirit chi and prepare to unlock his fourth spirit meridian. On the seventh day, a deafening sound echoed from Su Zimo's body. Boom! Beneath his green robes, his fourth spirit meridian was crystal clear and could be seen clearly. The spirit energy within surged and howled with the sound of crashing waves. For Meridian Foundation establishment in 7 days. On the 8th day, Su Xiaoning was at late-stage foundation establishment. On the 9th day, Leng Ro and Little Fatty unlocked their fourth spirit meridians one after another and raised their cultivation to 4 Meridian Foundation establishment. The few of them had the lowest cultivation realms. After entering the ancient battlefield, they were stimulated the most by the extremely rich spirit chi and broke through immediately. On the 10th day, another person broke through. Misty Peak, Ji Qingtian, unlocked his 6th spirit meridian and became a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. From 4 Meridian Foundation establishment onwards, unlocking spirit meridians became increasingly difficult. In fact, many cultivators were stuck at 3 Meridian Foundation establishment for their entire lives, unable to advance. The reason why Ji Qingtian was able to be the first to break through among the 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators was because of 2 reasons. On the one hand, it was because he had sufficient accumulations to break through. On the other hand, it was also because of the Misty Peak secret skill, Ethereal Foundation establishment. Most importantly, Ji Qingtian's near-death experience in the massive battle 10 days ago triggered the life potential in his body and allowed him to break through now. After 10 days, the strength of Su Zimo's group had increased. Everyone's confidence in this ancient ruin expedition was also boosted. When he saw that everyone was ready, Su Zimo waved his hand to disperse the formation of the cave and said in a deep voice, "Let's go." Chapter 351. Su Zimo's group sped towards the ancient ruin marked on the map. During this period of time, they encountered attacks from birds, beasts and ancient living beings as well. Thankfully, they were safe throughout the journey and finally arrived near the ruin after 3 days. Many cultivators were gathered at the foot of a steep mountain peak. They were dressed differently and were clearly from different sects and factions. The seal of this cave abode is getting weaker. We should be able to unseal it completely before nightfall. That's right. We didn't waste our time waiting here. Some of them were in groups of dozens while others were in groups of 2s and 3s. At a single glance, there were hundreds of people who were either whispering or chatting loudly. Apart from Su Zimo's group, there were other cultivators who came from all directions and were gathering towards this place. The number of people was increasing. From the other cultivators, Su Zimo's group found out that there was a concealment formation around the ruin. The reason why it was preserved was because none of the cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield discovered it. As time passed, the concealment formation could not hold on any longer and dissipated into the world, revealing traces of the ruin that were discovered by more and more cultivators. However, there was a seal around the periphery of the ruin that no one could break and could only wait for the seal to dissipate on its own. By the looks of it, this should be a cave abode left behind by a perfected Jean Dan. I wonder what treasures are inside. It's best if there's a meridian unlocking elixir. Of course, it would be even better if there's a supreme-grade spirit weapon. There might even be a perfect spirit weapon. Yes, judging from the seal outside the cave abode, this perfected Jean Dan was probably not a nobody in the ancient era. It's not impossible for him to have left behind a perfect spirit weapon. In the ancient battlefield, there were many types of ruins. There were cave abodes left behind by ancient cultivators like the one before them and ruins of sects that contained all sorts of spirit arts, secret skills, elixir recipes and talisman amulets. In fact, some of them might have even been lost. Almost all cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield had the meridian unlocking elixir as their first target. For Foundation establishment cultivators, the meridian unlocking elixir was a rare treasure that had long been lost in Tianhuang mainland. Each time a meridian unlocking elixir appeared, it would definitely lead to a bloody battle. Su Zimo brought Ji Yaoshue and the others to the foot of the mountain. They found an open space and sat down, quietly waiting for the seal to dissipate. Su Zimo looked at the cave abode at the top of the mountain, deep in thought. Little Fatty analyzed, I don't think there's anything good in perfected Jean Dan's cave abode. If it's a sect ruin, there's a high chance that a meridian unlocking pill will appear. Not necessarily. Su Zimo shook his head and said, those who can dominate the ancient battlefield and leave behind cave abodes and inheritances are not simple people. What's more, this cave has been sealed for 10,000 years without dissipating. There must be a great treasure inside. As time passed, the aura of the seal outside the cave grew weaker, and more cultivators gathered here. Although everyone was safe and sound, the atmosphere at the foot of the mountain was getting more and more tense. The only reason there was no conflict was because there was no treasure in sight. There was almost no doubt that once a great treasure was born, blood would definitely be shed. Suddenly, a commotion broke out from the crowd and they dispersed. A group of cold-looking cultivators in dark metal armor walked over. It's the Great Yu dynasty. Be careful later. Ji Yaoshua looked at the dozens of cultivators not far away and whispered, the leader should be the prince of the Great Yu dynasty. Just as Ji Yaoshua spoke, the Great Yu prince seemed to have sensed something and turned around as well. When he caught sight of Su Zimo and the others, a playful look flashed through his eyes. That's all you're left with? Seems like the Great Zhou dynasty has suffered heavy losses in less than 10 days. The Great Yu prince spoke and chuckled. I'll give the Great Zhou dynasty a suggestion. Don't get involved in this mess and you might be able to return to the Great Zhou dynasty alive. Otherwise, foo-foo. There's no need for you to worry. Ji Yaoshua's tone was calm. When he caught sight of Ji Yaoshua's appearance, the Great Yu prince's eyes lit up with a strange glint as he smiled evilly. Fairy, how should I address you? Immediately after, the Great Yu prince turned and caught sight of Leng Ro and Su Xiaoning as the evil glint in his eyes turned brighter. Not bad, not bad. The Great Yu prince clapped and laughed. Truly, each has their own merits. I like it, foo-foo. Insolent. Junhao stood out with a sullen expression and hollered, this is the princess of the Great Zhou dynasty. How dare you speak of such filthy things? Su Zimo frowned slightly. Although Junhao seemed like he was reprimanding the Great Yu dynasty, he had also exposed Ji Yaoshua's identity. It was hard to say if that was a good or bad move. No wonder. The Great Yu prince laughed. His eyes were dark as he stared at Ji Yaoshua's flawless face. His gaze changed as he said, "Only a princess of a dynasty can possess such an aura." For some unknown reason, Ji Yaoshua felt a wave of dizziness when she exchanged glances with the Great Yu prince. She felt drowsy as her consciousness sank. All of a sudden, a figure appeared in front of Ji Yaoshua, blocking the Great Yu prince's gaze. Ji Yaoshua shook her head and took a deep breath as her eyes regained clarity. A look of pity flashed through the depths of the Great Yu prince's eyes. Su Zimo said indifferently, "Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't go looking for trouble." The Great Yu prince frowned and looked at the scholarly green-robed cultivator between the two of them. Narrowing his eyes, he said coldly, "Get lost." Su Zimo's gaze narrowed and his aura changed. Instantly, a thick blood stench seemed to emanate from Su Zimo's body in a shuddering manner. In the eyes of the Great Yu prince, the other party was initially a frail scholar. However, in the blink of an eye, he had turned into a matchless fiend celestial from hell, stepping on mountains of corpses and seas of blood with a menacing aura. The moment Su Zimo looked at him, the Great Yu prince's heart nearly leaped out of his throat as his expression changed. Clang! Clang! The guards beside the Great Yu prince stepped forward instinctively and unsheathed the sharp blades at their waists, glaring at Su Zimo warily and nervously. Right then, the mountain in front of everyone suddenly shook and an ancient aura dissipated, revealing a cave abode halfway up the mountain. The eyes of many cultivators lit up. The seal had been removed. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Many cultivators summoned their flying swords one after another and soared into the air. There were more than 1,000 of them, and at a single glance, they sped towards the cave abode in a dense crowd. Whoever entered the cave abode first would naturally have the upper hand and might be able to obtain the treasures first. Su Zimo retracted his gaze and suppressed the killing intent in his heart for the time being. Turning to Ji Yaoshua and the others, he waved his hand. "Let's go." A venomous look flashed through the Great Yu prince's eyes as he said coldly, "Let's go fight for the treasures first. We'll deal with this person later." Boom! The cultivators who arrived at the cave abode first struck one after another and destroyed the entrance. Everyone entered in a single file amidst the billowing dust. Chapter 352. The moment they entered the cave abode, an ancient aura surged towards them. What entered their vision were 5 different tunnels that were wide and dark, leading to the depths of the unknown. All the cultivators who entered the cave abode paused with hesitant expressions. The 5 tunnels looked exactly the same. Nobody knew which tunnel would lead to the Meridian unlocking elixir or some other treasure. They could only try their luck. However, if they chose the wrong tunnel, there was a high chance they would return empty-handed. There was only one chance. Many cultivators hesitated for a moment before each of them chose one of the paths and rushed in. The cultivators of the Great Yu dynasty barged in with neat footsteps and strict discipline. It was clear that they were iron-blooded masters. Split into 5 groups and enter a tunnel each. If you don't find anything, return immediately. The voice of the Great Yu prince sounded. Understood. The cultivators of the Great Yu dynasty agreed. Ji Yaoshua and the others looked at Su Zimo instinctively. Unknowingly, they had already treated Su Zimo as the commander of this expedition. Naturally, the safest way was to split up like the Great Yu dynasty. That way, the chances of finding treasures would increase greatly. However, there were only 11 of them. If they split up, their strength would definitely be scattered and they would be easily ambushed in such a chaotic situation. A resolute look flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Split up. I'll head to the second tunnel on the left alone." The 10 of you will head to a tunnel together. Even if he was alone, Su Zimo was confident that he could escape unscathed. As for Ji Yaoshue and the others, most of them were at 5 Meridian Foundation Establishment while Ji Qingtian was at 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment. Furthermore, they had the protection of the Night Spirit, they would be able to protect themselves even if they encountered danger. Su Xiaoning closed her eyes and sensed for a moment before suddenly saying, "Let's head to the 4th tunnel on the left." Along the way, Su Xiaoning rarely spoke or made suggestions. Now that she suddenly made this choice, everyone was a little surprised. Ji Yaoshue pondered for a moment before nodding. "We'll listen to Xiaoning. She's the only elixir refinement master among us." Pausing for a moment, Ji Yaoshue looked at Su Zimo with a worried expression and whispered, "Zimo, be careful too." "Don't worry, I'll look for you as soon as possible." After saying that, Su Zimo patted Night Spirit's head. His figure flashed as he rushed toward the 2nd tunnel on the left. Ji Yaoshue and the others also moved and rushed towards the 4th tunnel. In the blink of an eye, the hall of the cave was already empty, leaving behind only a mess. Although there were 5 tunnels in the cave abode, there were even more cultivators who barged into the cave abode, there were more than 200 cultivators in each tunnel. Su Zimo condensed out the misty wings and unleashed his full power. His speed was extremely fast and it did not take long for him to overtake the group of cultivators. Boom! 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 A loud crashing sound came from the front. Su Zimo looked over and saw that there was a stone chamber at the end of the tunnel. The cultivators who arrived at the entrance first were working together to break the door of the stone chamber. However, the stone door was extremely thick and shone with a metallic luster. Even after countless years, it did not decay and was indestructible. Under the impact of the numerous spirit arts and spirit weapons, the stone door continued to shake and tremble. Countless dust fell, but the stone door still stood firm. Splash! Rumble! Boom! Boom! Right then, the sound of a tsunami could be heard above the heads of many cultivators with rumbling thunder in a frightening manner. Immediately after, a figure flew over everyone's heads and slammed heavily against the stone door. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Right in front of countless shocked gazes, the thick stone door was smashed into pieces by the figure and collapsed on the spot, turning into rubble. Pust! Many cultivators sucked in a cold breath. Was that even human? After Su Zimo smashed the stone door, he rushed into the stone chamber without hesitation. It was a spirit weapon chamber. The stone chamber was extremely spacious and there was a crack that was as thick as an arm at the top that spanned the entire chamber. Through the crack, one could vaguely see the gradually darkening night sky outside. There were many spirit weapons in the stone chamber and most of them were flying swords. There were also armor, shields and other defensive spirit weapons that were scattered on the stone racks. At a single glance, there were hundreds of them. Many cultivators rushed in and their eyes turned slightly red with greed when they caught sight of the spirit weapons. Snatch! Without hesitation, many cultivators struck one after another to snatch the spirit weapons on the stone racks. 3 superior-grade spirit weapons. Ha ha ha! This is a supreme-grade flying sword. The heavens are on my side. Su Zimo had a calm expression and was not in a hurry. His gaze was clear and shone with a deep glint as he swept his gaze across the spirit weapons on the stone racks one by one. To be fair, spirit weapons were no longer that attractive to Su Zimo. Unless it was a perfect spirit weapon or a legendary Khanate spirit weapon. However, the chances of encountering a Khanate spirit weapon in this cave abode at the periphery of the ancient battlefield were extremely slim. Su Zimo was merely searching for perfect spirit weapons. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's gaze narrowed and landed on a gigantic bow that was dark in color. The bow was placed in a corner and looked extremely ordinary and inconspicuous. However, at that moment, night had fallen outside and the moon was above the willow branches. The moonlight of the clear Leng Ro shone through the crack at the top of the stone chamber and shone on the gigantic bow perfectly. A streak of moonlight flowed down the curved bow and there was not a single speck of dust on the bow. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. Swash! In a flash, Su Zimo sprinted towards the corner and arrived instantly. Holding the gigantic bow in his hands, he injected spirit energy. Bam! The bowstring trembled, emitting a trembling sound that could shake one's soul. 5 spirit lights shone on the gigantic bow. 5 spirit patterns, a perfect spirit weapon. Su Zimo was delighted. There were 3 words carved on the bow. Moon Concealment Bow. Immediately after, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he exclaimed softly. Behind the 3 words, there was a faint spirit pattern that emitted a faint glow. However, it was difficult to detect under the cover of the 5 spirit patterns. This is a Khanate spirit pattern. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He finally understood why there was such a crack at the top of the stone chamber. According to the direction of the crack, it was the trajectory of the moon. Every night, the moonlight would shine on the gigantic bow constantly, nourishing it. There could only be a single reason for the cave abode owner's actions given the abundance of spirit chi in the ancient battlefield. He wanted to make use of the moonlight and ancient spirit chi to nourish a Khanate spirit weapon. However, it was a pity that the Khanate spirit pattern had yet to take form and was only half-nourished. The moon concealment bow could only be considered as a quasi-Khanate spirit weapon. Right then, a sense of danger flashed in Su Zimo's mind as he sensed a scorching gaze shooting towards him. Suddenly, the stone chamber seemed to have gone silent. The 5 spirit lights that shone from the moon concealment bow were completely exposed to the gazes of many cultivators and attracted their attention. A perfect spirit weapon. It was a treasure that even perfected being Jean Dan would fight for. No one said anything and everyone's breathing turned heavier. Chapter 353. Kill. Finally, a cultivator could not hold it in any longer and attacked first, conjuring hand seals and pointing at Su Zimo. Swoosh. A scorching fireball surged over. Clang. 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 The sound of swords rang and countless spirit lights flashed. Instantly, sword chi streaked through the stone chamber and the swords were all pointed at a single person, Su Zimo. The cultivators that attacked came from different regions and sections. However, at that moment, they were all working together with a tacit understanding. In everyone's opinion, even a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator would definitely die against such a concentrated attack. The scorching fireball sped past, and the air in the air was already burning, making crackling sounds. Bang! Suddenly, Su Zimo extended his palm with streaks of lightning coiling around it as he crushed the incoming fireball. His palm was unharmed. A spirit art of that level could not threaten Su Zimo at all. If it was released by a 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, that would be the case. When they saw that, the pupils of many cultivators constricted slightly. Immediately after, everyone's vision blurred. Su Zimo's figure had already vanished from the spot. Bang! 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 A path of blood appeared in the crowd as figures were sent flying by a tremendous force one after another, spewing blood everywhere. Some of them fell against the stone walls with their heads bleeding and their tendons and bones broken. Some of them could not even react in time and were smashed into pieces, dying on the spot. It was too fast. Almost instantly, Su Zimo had already charged into the crowd. In such a stone chamber, Su Zimo's melee combat strength could be unleashed to its limits. A cultivator from the Great Yu dynasty on the left slashed over. Su Zimo took a slight step forward and closed in with a single step, punching the person's chest. Snap! The person's chest caved in deeply and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Flying in response to the sound, the person's eyes dimmed and he died on the spot. All of a sudden, Su Zimo retreated and channeled all his strength to his back, bursting forth as he closed in on the other party. A cultivator behind him was sent flying. His body turned into a mist of blood in midair. Su Zimo's footsteps changed continuously. He moved 10 feet horizontally, bent his knees, and stomped on a cultivator continuously, breaking him into two. Mountain pressing lean, sanguine ape seal and divine steed dismemberment were all killing moves from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, and each move was lethal. These moves were the essence of life and death experiences and the baptism of fresh blood. They unleashed the power of the various demon kings to the extreme. Su Zimo twisted and turned in the crowd. Everywhere he went, people would be thrown off their feet. He charged left and right, and no one was a match for him. His momentum was monstrous. Suddenly, in the chaotic battlefield, Su Zimo felt a sense of danger. An almost inaudible sound pierced the back of his head. If not for the fact that Su Zimo had already opened the acupoints in his ears, he would not have heard it at all. Without much time to think, Su Zimo spread out the misty wings and soared into the sky. His entire body curled into a ball. Swoosh! Swoosh! A blue light swept past Su Zimo's feet, emitting a nauseating stench. It was a steel needle as thin as a cow's hair. There's poison. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze. If it was an ordinary poison, Su Zimo would not be afraid at all. Even when he was tainted by the poisonous blood of the blood centipede queen, his spirit perception did not warn him. But now, his spirit perception was the first to warn him against this blue poison needle. Either the poison needle was so strong that even his bloodline could not withstand it, or there was something special about the poison needle. Before Su Zimo's thought was finished, the poison needle landed in the crowd. A few cultivators could not dodge in time and were pierced by the poison needle. The expressions of those cultivators changed and their glabella turned black instantly. Before they could take a few steps, they collapsed to the ground, turning pitch black. They were already poisoned to death. The entire process took less than 3 breaths. What a strong poison! Sweeping his gaze, Su Zimo could not help but frown when he could not find the person who released the poison needle in the crowd. Confusion. Suddenly, Su Zimo reached out and a ball of thunder gathered in his palm. Shimmering with lightning, it exploded in front of everyone with a blinding light. Thunder rumbled and reverberated through the stone chamber, becoming clearer and deafening. The Thunder Art of the Void Thunder Manual could make use of the power of thunder to blind a cultivator's 5 senses. Worried about the safety of Ji Yaoshua and the others, Su Zimo did not intend to get entangled with the cultivators in the stone chamber. Furthermore, there was a venomous snake-like cultivator hiding in the dark. Making use of his confusion, Su Zimo's figure flashed and he dashed out of the stone chamber, speeding along the tunnel he came from. Chase! He has a perfect spirit weapon. We can't let him escape just like that. Many cultivators snapped out of their confusion and hollered as they chased after him on their flying swords. In the crowd, a skinny man who looked extremely ordinary looked at Su Zimo's back view with a cold glint in his eyes as he chased after the crowd. Flying swords and spirit arts chased after him endlessly in the tunnel. Frustrated, Su Zimo suddenly recalled the quasi-khanate spirit weapon that he had just obtained and took out the moon concealment bow from his storage bag. He nocked an arrow, nocked it and drew the bow to a full moon. The entire process was done in a single breath and the 5 spirit patterns on the moon concealment bow shone with a Leng Ro light, resembling a full moon. Shoo! 3 arrows were shot in unison. However, only a single sound tore through the air. The cultivator at the front was a 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivator. When he saw Su Zimo knocking an arrow, he was already prepared and crushed a protection talisman right away. Poof! There was a crisp sound. The moment the protection talisman was formed, it was pierced by the arrow. That person's head was also pierced by the arrow and exploded on the spot. The cultivator behind that person was caught off guard and was struck by the arrow that was not fully expended, falling from midair. A cultivator from the Great Yu dynasty relied on his armor and did not slow down at all as he injected spirit energy furiously, causing 3 spirit lights to shine on his armor. It was a superior grade defensive spirit weapon. Poof! An arrow tore through the air and pierced that person's armor instantly. The heart protection mirror on that person's chest shattered and a blood hole the size of a bowl was pierced through his chest with blood gushing out. That person sprinted forward a few more steps before collapsing heavily on the ground, dying with widened eyes. When he saw that, Su Zimo was secretly shocked. The might of the moon concealment bow was shocking and could even break through the defenses of superior-grade spirit weapons with ease. Its killing power was even above Blood Quencher. It was no wonder why it was a quasi-connate spirit weapon. 3 arrows were enough to kill 5 cultivators, including a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. The cultivators who were initially in hot pursuit slowed down immediately, none of them wanted to be at the front. If the green-robed cultivator in front of them were to turn back and shoot a few more arrows, they would be stuck together and would not be able to dodge. It was almost certain death. With that delay, Su Zimo's figure was getting further and further away. Returning to the main hall of the cave abode, Su Zimo looked around and did not see Ji Yaoshue and the others. Instead, he saw many cultivators exiting from the other passageways and charging towards the 4th passageway on the left. That was the passageway that Ji Yaoshue and the others chose earlier on. I heard that this is the elixir chamber and a meridian unlocking elixir has appeared. Hurry or it'll be too late. When he heard the discussions of those cultivators, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Roar! Suddenly, a terrifying roar sounded from the depths of the passageway. It was as though the roar of a god of massacre from the netherworld was shuddering. It's Night Spirit! Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and dashed into the 4th passageway in a flash without hesitation. Chapter 354. More and more cultivators rushed towards the 4th tunnel. Their eyes were red and they looked excited. The Meridian Unlocking Elixir was only effective for the first time and was an extremely rare item even in the ancient era. It was extremely difficult to refine and was only a reward given to legacy disciples by super sections. How many Meridian Unlocking Elixirs were discovered? I heard that there were 3. That's too little. There's no helping it. How can there be so many Meridian Unlocking Elixirs unless it's the ruins of a major sect? It's already a stroke of luck to be able to discover 3 Meridian Unlocking Elixirs in the cave abode of perfected Jin Dan. There were hundreds of cultivators gathered outside the elixir room and the number was still increasing. Ji Yaoshue, the Great Zhou dynasty won't be able to protect these 3 Meridian Unlocking Elixirs. I advise you not to court death. The voice of the Great Yu Prince sounded. That's right. Hand over the Meridian Unlocking Elixirs. A cultivator shouted. In the innermost part of the elixir room, Ji Yaoshue and the others were huddled in a defensive formation with grim expressions and a few corpses at their feet. The wings behind Ji Qingtian flapped and his supreme-grade flying sword flew out of his hands. It circled around him and shone with 4 bedazzling spirit lights, letting out a series of sword hum. Surveying his surroundings, Ji Qingtian said in a deep voice, "If you want the elixirs, you'll have to ask the sword in my hand first." Even though he said that, he was still feeling uneasy and his palms were sweating. The situation was extremely disadvantageous for them. Instantly, the 3 Meridian Unlocking Elixirs turned Ji Yaoshue and the others into a public target. If not for Ji Qingtian and Night Spirit's consecutive attacks to kill the cultivators who tried to snatch the elixirs, they would have been drowned in the chaos. Fufu. The Great Yu Prince chuckled. Fellow Daoist, you don't have to show off. There are hundreds of us here and a single slash from each of us will be enough to deal with you guys. However, don't even think about escaping unscathed. Although Ji Yaoxue was a woman, there was a sharp and murderous look on her face as she refused to back down. There was no reason for her to hand over the meridian unlocking elixirs. Right now, the reason why the other cultivators had not attacked yet was because they were wary of Ji Qingtian in midair and Night Spirit on the ground. However, as time went by, more and more cultivators gathered outside and the patience of the cultivators there gradually wore thin. All of them had ferocious gazes as they conjured hand seals and summoned their flying swords, ready to attack at any moment. The great Yu Prince glanced at the faces of Ji Yaoxue, Leng Rou, and Su Xiaoning. He smiled faintly and said, "Fairies, I really can't bear to destroy you. You'd better know your place. Once the war breaks out, even I won't be able to protect you, hee. This is a feud between the great Zhou dynasty and the great Yu dynasty. Some cultivators, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't be used by others." Ji Yaoxue ignored the great Yu Prince and looked at the other cultivators, trying to get them to stay out of the matter. The great Yu Prince harumphed coldly and a vicious glint flashed through his eyes as he declared loudly, "Everyone, we have to see blood if we want to obtain the elixir." The meridian unlocking pills were getting rarer and rarer. Now, there were only 3 of them. Everyone would have to rely on their own abilities to decide who would get them. With that, the great Yu Prince lowered his arm and declared coldly, "Kill." Boom! With that order, the flames of war were ignited and a series of cheers burst forth from the crowd. More than 100 cultivators conjured hand seals and pointed at Ji Yaoxue and the others from afar. Spirit arts burst forth like a torrential downpour, filling the air with resplendent lights. The spirit chi in the elixir chamber seemed to have materialized and surged instantly. Shu! 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 The sound of sword chi tearing through the air echoed one after another. Hundreds and thousands of sword lights surged and shone brightly, causing the temperature of the elixir chamber to drop significantly. This was an attack that could destroy the heavens and the earth. At that moment, even the 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, Ji Qingtian, turned pale. The current situation was even more dangerous than when they were surrounded by the Great Zhou and Great Xia dynasties more than 10 days ago. Ji Yaoxue and the others crushed their protection talismans hurriedly. Leng Rou even took out all the defensive talismans in her storage bag and threw them out in a single breath. There were dozens of talismans that formed barriers around them. That was the strength of talisman masters. Talisman masters did not have strong head-on combat strength. However, if they had enough talismans, they could even kill opponents above their level by smashing them with offensive and defensive talismans. Bang! 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 Spirit arts collided against the talisman barriers with a deafening sound. The power of hundreds of cultivators attacking at the same time was way too strong and Leng Rou's talisman barriers shattered one after another. More than 10 great Yu cultivators donned heavy armor and wielded steel sabers as they charged towards Ji Yaoxue and the others. Some body-tempered cultivators were closing in rapidly from the crowd as well. All of a sudden, a black shadow flashed by like a spirit in the night, lunging towards the incoming great Yu cultivators at an extremely fast speed. Night Spirit. 10 razor-sharp claws extended silently and shone with a cold glint, grabbing the throats of 2 cultivators. Their necks were mangled and fresh blood dripped, they were already dead. Night Spirit's steel whip-like tail swung in the crowd and whipped a few cultivators into pieces. The spikes on its tail only stopped after penetrating the heads of 2 cultivators. Roar! Night Spirit lowered its head and was about to pounce. Opening its mouth, it bared its menacing fangs and let out a deafening roar from the depths of its throat. The entire elixir room was shaking, and countless dust particles drifted down. Ah! 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 Many cultivators cried out in pain. They all stopped what they were doing and instinctively covered their ears. Some of the protection talisman barriers that some cultivators had set up beforehand shattered with a single sound. The row of cultivators closest to Night Spirit had their eyes bulged and bloodshot as blood oozed from the corners of their eyes, ears, mouth, and nostrils. They were bleeding from all 7 orifices. Gradually, their pupils dilated and they fell limply to the ground. They were killed by Night Spirit's roar. Many cultivators were shocked when they saw that. Immediately after, Night Spirit returned to Su Xiaoning's side and surveyed the surroundings with a cold gaze, guarding her carefully. Buzz! A faint ripple appeared in the void, like a ripple on the surface of a calm lake, piercing into the crowd. Ethereal sword, nothingness. Poof! A cultivator's head was pierced and he died on the spot. Ji Yaoshua, Little Fatty, and the others attacked as well. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 cultivators of the Great Yu dynasty were killed. Hatred flashed through the eyes of the Great Yu prince. However, he tried his best to compose himself and hollered, "Everyone, hold your ground. There's only 10 of them. If we join forces, there's no need to worry about that demon beast." In that single exchange, the barrier formed by Leng Ro's dozens of talismans had already shattered. Although Ji Yaoshua and the others were fine and managed to kill a few of them with the help of Night Spirit, the number of cultivators on the other side was increasing. As long as they joined forces once more, there would definitely be casualties. Even Night Spirit might not be able to protect Su Xiaoning against such a concentrated attack. Kill them. The Great Yu Prince raised his palm once more and shouted. Let's see who dares to move. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded from the back of the crowd. Immediately after, the sound of clothes fluttering could be heard. It was extremely fast and arrived before them in the blink of an eye. A shuddering aura surged over. Chapter 355. There were hundreds of cultivators mixed in the chaotic battlefield. There was no way they would stop just because of a single person's words. Among the crowd, there were still some cultivators who summoned their flying swords and conjured hand seals. Swoosh! 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 The sound of air tearing could be heard at an extremely fast speed as a few cold glints flashed by. The arrows arrived before the person arrived. Poof! 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 There were a few crisp sounds and flashes of blood. Those cultivators had just conjured their spirit arts and summoned their flying swords when their heads were pierced by arrows before they could even attack, dying on the spot. Who's there? Instantly, the crowd burst into a commotion and shouted. Swoosh! A green figure rushed over at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, he passed over the heads of many cultivators and entered the elixir chamber. Arriving before Ji Yaoshua and the others, he descended slowly. You again. When the Great Yu Prince caught sight of Su Zimo, his expression darkened. However, he was secretly delighted the next moment. Given this situation, anyone who came would have to die. The Great Yu Prince did not believe that this seemingly frail green-robed cultivator would be able to salvage the situation. There were hundreds and thousands of Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. Even a 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator might not be able to escape unscathed. Su Zimo swept his gaze and was relieved when he saw that Ji Yaoshua and the others were uninjured. Zimo, watch out. There are at least more than 10 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators on the other side. Ji Yaoshua reminded softly. Right then, the cultivators who were chasing after them from the spirit weapon chamber arrived one after another. They glared at Su Zimo with wary and indignant gazes. Among them, a cultivator from the Great Yu dynasty pointed at Su Zimo and said while panting, Your Highness, a perfect spirit weapon was snatched away by this person in the spirit weapon chamber. It's the bow in his hands. A perfect spirit weapon. When they heard those words, the eyes of many cultivators lit up as countless gazes stared at the bow in Su Zimo's hands with greed. Good, good, good. 3 Meridian unlocking pills and a perfect spirit artifact. The great Yu Prince clapped his hands and laughed. His smile turned increasingly sinister as his voice turned bone-chilling. Let's see how many lives you from the great Zhou dynasty dare to take. What a coincidence. Su Zimo smiled indifferently and said, I also want to see how many lives you dare to take. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Zimo's eyes flashed with a cold light. Unknowingly, a long arrow had appeared in his hand and was knocked on the bowstring. The moon concealment bow shone brightly. Whoosh! The arrow tore through the air and pierced towards the great Yu Prince's head with a cold flash. Not good. Your Highness, be careful. Nobody expected Su Zimo to be so fearless in the face of hundreds of murderous Foundation establishment cultivators that he dared to make the first move. What kind of courage was this? What was even more frightening was that this arrow was too fast and too powerful. There was no way to dodge it. The great Yu Prince's expression changed. In a flash, a great Yu guard shielded in front of the great Yu Prince and tossed out a gigantic steel shield that landed on the ground with a loud boom. Clang! A round hole appeared on the surface of the steel shield. The arrow penetrated the steel shield and pierced the person's head, slamming heavily into the great Yu Prince's chest before coming to a stop and falling to the ground. Snap! Cracks appeared on the heart protection mirror in front of the great Yu Prince's chest as well. Swoosh! Before the great Yu Prince could react, another sound sounded. The air seemed to be torn apart by a sharp arrow, causing one's heart to skip a beat. A second arrow. Clang! Two great Yu guards were the first to react as they whipped out their sabers and slashed at the incoming arrow. Clang! Clang! The sound of metal clashing echoed and sparks flew everywhere. The two great Yu guards shuddered and their palms tore apart as they cried out in pain and their sabers flew out of their hands. Swoosh! The arrow pierced the great Yu Prince's chest once more. Although it was blocked by the two guards and its strength was reduced by half, the heart protection mirror in front of his chest shattered as well. Swoosh! The sound of an arrow tearing through the air sounded once more, not giving the great Yu Prince any chance to catch his breath. Although the two consecutive arrows did not injure the great Yu Prince, he was already scared out of his wits and was scared out of his wits. At that moment, the great Yu Prince had just summoned his flying sword and was about to soar into the air to escape from this place when a cold light appeared before his eyes and grew larger. The great Yu Prince could smell the scent of death. Right in front of everyone, the great Yu Prince had just leaped into the air when a cold light pierced his chest and exited his body, stabbing heavily into the stone wall not far away. The blood-stained tail of the arrow quivered repeatedly and a series of blood droplets flew out. The great Yu Prince's gaze was unfocused and he was already dead by the time he fell to the ground. Not only did that arrow pierce the great Yu Prince's body, the tremendous force even ruptured his organs and took away all of his life force. 3 arrows and a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was dead. B*****, how dare you? Another great Yu cultivator's eyes were bloodshot as he spun around, wanting to charge forward with all his might. Su Zimo did not say anything and merely drew his bow. With a swoosh, that person fell to the ground and died. The arrow pierced his body and 2 more great Yu cultivators behind him. 3 people were dead. Another great Yu cultivator had just spoken. Su Zimo raised his hand and shot another arrow. That person was prepared and crushed a protection talisman right away. Poof! The light barrier formed by the protection talisman shattered and that person fell to the ground, dying on the spot with a bloody hole in his face. In the blink of an eye, the cultivators of the Great Yu dynasty were all killed by Su Zimo's arrows and there were not many left. Su Zimo stood at the front and wielded the moon concealment bow in his left hand. Surveying his surroundings with a burning gaze, he said indifferently, "I'll take the life of anyone who dares to move." Pust! Many cultivators gasped and their gazes flickered as the way they looked at Su Zimo changed gradually. In everyone's eyes, this green-robed cultivator looked extremely frail. However, even though he stood casually in the crowd with a gigantic bow that shone with moonlight, none of the hundreds of Foundation establishment cultivators dared to move recklessly. "I'll take the life of anyone who dares to move." Although his tone was calm, no one dared to question it. Many cultivators knew that if they attacked at the same time, no matter how accurate the green-robed cultivator's archery was or how strong he was, he would not be able to kill everyone. He would definitely die. However, everyone also realized that the green-robed cultivator possessed the strength to kill everyone, and even 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators might not be able to escape unscathed. Nobody dared to step forward. A single person and a single bow intimidated hundreds of Foundation establishment cultivators such that no one dared to move. Right then, a cultivator suddenly shouted, "That person has another perfect spirit weapon in his hands. It's a blood-colored saber." "That's right, we saw it with our own eyes." Another person replied. 2 perfect spirit weapons. The crowd was in an uproar. Su Zimo's gaze shifted to the faces of the people who spoke, and he understood. The ones who spoke were cultivators of Great Xia and Great Shang. More than 10 days ago, the 2 dynasties were defeated and these cultivators were lucky enough to escape. Now that they were here, they spread out and hid in the crowd. "Fellow Taoists, there are hundreds of us. If we attack together, how much power can that person's bow release?" "That's right. Fellow Taoists, don't be intimidated by that person. I heard that he's the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou and has many supreme-grade spirit weapons in his storage bag. If we kill him, those treasures will be ours." When they heard that, the cultivators who were initially hesitant and wanted to retreat had their killing intent reignited once more. The crowd became restless. Chapter 356. 2 perfect spirit weapons, 3 meridian unlocking elixirs and many supreme-grade spirit weapons were enough to make any cultivator lose their rationality. Once we attack, there will definitely be cultivators who will die to that person's bow. However, as long as I'm not the one who dies, I'll have a chance to obtain the perfect spirit weapon and meridian unlocking elixir. That bow can only shoot 10 arrows at most. How many of us can he kill when there are hundreds and thousands of us? Many cultivators had their own thoughts and were ready to make a move. A skinny cultivator hid in the dark and glared at Su Zimo with a venomous gaze. A blue glint flashed through the gaps between his fingers. A murderous aura began to fill the stone chamber. "Kill!" Someone in the crowd shouted, and instantly, the flames of war were ignited. Without even looking, Su Zimo released an arrow with a flip of his hand, following the voice and killing a Great Xia cultivator hidden in the crowd instantly. Many flying swords tore through the air with a sharp edge. Spirit chi rumbled in the stone chamber as many spirit arts arrived. Su Zimo did not dodge or retreat. His eyes lit up as he slapped his storage bag and 18 flying swords appeared instantly. The swords trembled and shone brightly with spirit lights. The flying swords sped forward, leaving sword scars in midair and triggering the light of formation patterns. In the blink of an eye, the 18 flying swords gathered together with their tips pointing outwards, forming a gigantic sword-shaped disc. Like a blazing sun, it released 18 streaks of sword chi that were dazzling and sharp. Candlelight sword formation. Clang! 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 There was an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing as many superior-grade flying swords collided against the candlelight sword formation and were sent flying, stabbing into the walls of the stone chamber as they trembled endlessly. Sword formation master. That person is a sword formation master. 18 supreme-grade flying swords. There must be even more treasures in his storage bag. What a strong sword formation. The cries of the cultivators sounded one after another. Go! Su Zimo pointed forward and the gigantic sword-shaped blazing sun crushed towards the crowd. The sword beam was chilling and sword shadows flew, accompanied by a blinding blood mist. The slaughter had already begun. At 3 Meridian Foundation establishment, Su Zimo's candlelight sword formation could already kill 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. Now that Su Zimo had unlocked his 4th spirit meridian, his spirit energy was even denser and his control of the candlelight sword formation was even stronger. Even though the cultivators before him were all geniuses from various sects and factions of Tianhuang mainland, they were still unable to defend against the might of the candlelight. Ah! 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 Screams could be heard from the crowd. Clang! At the same time, Su Zimo put away the moon concealment bow and took out a gigantic blood-colored saber from his storage bag, swinging it in reverse. Clang! 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 The many incoming flying swords were shattered by Blood Quencher on the spot and scattered to the ground. Only supreme-grade spirit weapons could withstand Blood Quencher's sharpness. Crash! Rumble! Rumble! Su Zimo channeled his bloodline and a torrential wave seemed to have surged within his body. It was accompanied by rumbling thunder and the strange sounds of tigers and leopards that were shuddering. Wielding Blood Quencher with a single hand, Su Zimo pointed to the group of cultivators and shouted, "This is the perfect grade spirit weapon, Blood Quencher. Let's see who has the life to claim it." Many cultivators were completely stunned by Su Zimo's methods and kept quiet out of fear. Attack! At the same time, Ji Yaoshua ordered. Everyone from Misty Peak attacked one after another to help Su Zimo. Boom! Su Zimo used the stance of the plow heaven stride and took a step forward. The moment his feet landed on the ground, there was a deafening sound and the entire elixir chamber shook as though it could collapse at any moment. Many cultivators lost their footing and almost fell to the ground. Su Zimo roared in laughter and his aura surged as he charged into the crowd with Blood Quencher in hand. The saber spun and slashed left and right in a grand manner, no one was Su Zimo's match. Blood Quencher was heavy to begin with and even Foundation establishment cultivators with tempered bodies such as Little Fatty, Shi Jian, and the others could not lift it. Coupled with Su Zimo's powerful physique and terrifying bloodline, Blood Quencher would be a killing blade with frightening lethality if it was swung around in the crowd. Let's see where you guys can escape to. Su Zimo charged into the crowd and targeted the cultivators of the Great Shang and Great Xia dynasties. No matter who stood in front of him, they were sent flying with a single slash of his saber. Anyone who was touched by Blood Quencher would either die or be injured. The remnants of the Great Shang and Great Xia dynasties were initially hidden deep within the crowd. However, in the blink of an eye, Su Zimo found them one by one and killed them on the spot. Many cultivators were utterly defeated and severed limbs flew everywhere on the battlefield. Blood spewed everywhere and the entire stone chamber was almost dyed red. Even 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators could do nothing to Su Zimo. This was what it meant by brute force. At that moment, many cultivators gradually realized that only 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators or the successors of top factions of Tianhuang mainland would be able to take on an existence as such. Everyone squeezed, shoved, and screamed as they fled towards the tunnel they came from. However, the entrance of the stone chamber was only so big and there was a limit to the number of cultivators that could pass through the tunnel at the same time. Hundreds and thousands of cultivators were squeezed together in a chaotic mess. All of a sudden, Su Zimo felt a sense of danger. It's him again. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and a killing intent surged in his heart. In a flash, Su Zimo lowered his body and almost stuck to the ground. As though he had transformed into an anaconda, he slithered through the crowd and vanished. A faint blue light flashed past the spot where Su Zimo disappeared into the crowd. After 2 breaths of time, the faces of more than 10 cultivators in the crowd turned as black as ink. They fell to the ground without a sound and were already dead. In such a chaotic battlefield, it was not a big deal for more than 10 cultivators to fall. Before long, they were drowned by the fleeing figures behind and nobody noticed them at all. In a corner, a skinny man was sandwiched in the crowd. Although he looked like he was fleeing, in reality, his gaze was fixed on the crowd, as though he was searching for something. Could he be dead already? The skinny man murmured softly with a hint of confusion in his eyes. Just now, the crowd was in a mess and blocked his vision. After he attacked, he could vaguely make out that the green-robed cultivator seemed to have collapsed. Logically speaking, that person was bound to die after being struck by his soul-chasing needle. However, no matter how the skinny man searched, he could not find the green-robed cultivator's corpse. Could he have been brought somewhere else by the crowd in the chaos? The skinny man furrowed his brows, feeling that something was amiss. Not far away, in the midst of the chaos, a green-robed figure was sprawled on the ground. Using all four limbs, the figure slithered over and was approaching rapidly. Just as the skinny man was deep in thought, his vision blurred and a green-robed figure stood up from the ground. It was so close that it blocked his vision. "Are you looking for me?" A cold voice suddenly sounded in the skinny man's ears. It was filled with bone-chilling killing intent, causing his heart to sink to the bottom. Chapter 357. A hint of panic flashed through the skinny man's eyes. However, he regained his composure in the blink of an eye. Spirit energy surged within his body and 6 spirit meridians lit up beneath his robes as he waved his hand. A cloud of scarlet powder flew toward him and spread out in an instant, bringing with it a faint fragrance. Su Zimo felt his head spin and his heart skipped a beat. He channeled his bloodline and circulated it furiously within his body, causing the dizziness to vanish instantly. At the same time, Su Zimo felt a sense of danger. In a flash, he squatted down and curled into a ball. The moment Su Zimo squatted down, a cold light flashed above his head. Su Zimo took a closer look. It was a pitch-black steel spike that was mixed in with the scarlet powder and could not be detected at all. In reality, the scarlet powder was extremely toxic to begin with and ordinary cultivators would not be able to withstand it. Even if a cultivator had a strong physique and terrifying blood chi, they would feel dizzy and lose consciousness for a short period of time after inhaling a little of it. During this period of time, the steel spike hidden in the powder was enough to pierce the opponent's skull. That was the skinny man's killing move. He had even calculated that the scarlet powder might not be able to hurt Su Zimo. However, he had not expected Su Zimo to wake up so quickly. Furthermore, the moment he was awake, he squatted down and avoided his sure-kill attack. In a single exchange, he was already in a perilous situation. After squatting down, Su Zimo took a step forward and half-knelt on one knee. The killing intent in his eyes was concealed and he raised his hands in the air as though he was offering an immortal fruit. At the same time that he avoided the skinny man's killing move, Su Zimo released his killing move in reverse. The skinny man's expression did not change as he leaped back and extended his feet, knocking towards Su Zimo's hands. Su Zimo frowned. If this was any other time, Su Zimo would definitely be fearless if the other party chose to fight him head-on. Given his physique, he was absolutely confident that he could shatter the skinny man's foot with a single punch. However, for some reason, Su Zimo felt a sense of uneasiness the moment the skinny man kicked out. Whoosh! Su Zimo's misty wings extended from his back. Without waiting for the technique to finish, he suddenly soared into the sky. Suddenly, a dark green blade extended from the tip of the skinny man's feet. It emitted a foul stench and was clearly laced with poison. Just now, even though Su Zimo's punch could shatter this person's foot, he would most likely be injured by the poisonous blade on this person's foot. Su Zimo realized that this thin man was covered in poison and could not be touched at all. Clang! In midair, Su Zimo pulled out Blood Quencher from his storage bag and descended from the skies like a heavenly god with a torrential killing intent. He hollered, "Die!" Whoosh! Blood Quencher slashed through the air, the massive blood beam seemingly cutting the elixir chamber into two. The skinny man's expression was horrified. His eyes were completely shrouded by the blood-red light, and he could barely see anything. Slapping his storage bag, the skinny man hurriedly took out a steel shield. Injecting spirit energy into it, it instantly expanded and shielded his head. Boom! The moment the shield was brought out, the blood beam had already descended and smashed against it heavily with a deafening bang. The shield shattered into pieces. With a shard of the shield pierced the skinny man's abdomen, almost piercing through it as blood gushed out. The skinny man staggered a few steps back and fell to the ground. His face was frighteningly pale as he looked at Su Zimo, who was striding over. A venomous look flashed through his eyes as he laughed bitterly. You can't kill me. I'm from Poison Sect. Poison Sect? Su Zimo arrived before the skinny man and looked down with a cold expression. When he saw that Su Zimo's eyes were unmoved, the skinny man laughed mockingly. Judging from your reaction, you must not have heard of Poison Sect, right? Su Zimo was expressionless. You're right, I haven't heard of it. However, I'd like to hear about it. Ha! The skinny man laughed sinisterly. Poison Sect is one of the 5 unorthodox groups. You won't be able to bear the consequences of offending Poison Sect. Let me remind you, I'm only the weakest disciple of Poison Sect. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to the periphery of the ancient battlefield to explore. Demonist Ji had once told Su Zimo that there were 9 top factions in Tianhuang mainland. The Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects were one of them. Among the 9 factions, there was a faction known as the Unorthodox groups. 9 immortal sects, 8 demon races, 7 fiend sects, 6 Buddhist monasteries and followed by the 5 unorthodox groups. In other words, Poison Sect was also one of the top sects in Tianhuang mainland. Typically speaking, it was impossible to bump into the successors of the 9 factions at the periphery of the ancient battlefield. However, the skinny man's words should be true. Although this person's cultivation realm was not high, his methods were sinister and he was covered in poison. Given Su Zimo's strength, he would die on the spot if he was careless. So what if it's the 5 unorthodox groups? Su Zimo asked with a calm tone. The skinny man's expression changed. He could sense a hint of killing intent from Su Zimo's calm tone. Even if you're from the immortal sects, I'll dare to kill you. Su Zimo sneered and slashed with his saber. The skinny man howled, if you dare to kill me, all of you will die in the ancient battlefield. The moment he said that, the skinny man's head flew into the air and a fountain of blood spewed out. In that short period of time, there were only corpses left in the elixir chamber. All the other cultivators had fled, leaving behind wretched figures. Ji Yaoshue and the others had just experienced another huge battle. Although they were exhausted, they could not hide the excitement in their eyes. They had reaped great rewards from this battle. Not only did they obtain 100 storage bags, they even managed to protect 3 meridian unlocking elixirs. Ji Yaoshue handed Su Zimo a jade bottle and smiled. Zimo, there are 3 meridian unlocking elixirs in here. You get one. Since Xiaoning was the first to discover the meridian unlocking elixir, she should get one. Fellow Daoist Ji Qingtian will get the last one. I don't think anyone has any objections to this distribution. Su Zimo received the jade bottle and opened it to take a look. A bitter medicinal fragrance wafted out and the spirit energy in his spirit meridian stirred. The grades of the 3 meridian unlocking elixirs were not high, 1 inferior grade and 2 middle grade. Su Zimo pushed the jade bottle back. Keep them first. We'll talk about this later. Let's organize our gains and leave this place first. All right. Ji Yaoshue nodded. Before long, everyone was done packing and left the elixir chamber with Su Zimo, returning to the main hall of the cave abode. Looking at the 5 tunnels, Su Zimo pondered for a moment. If two of the tunnels lead to the spirit weapon and elixir chambers, there's a high chance that the other three tunnels lead to spirit arts, talismans and formation manuals. That's right, that should be the case, Ji Qingtian nodded. Ji Yaoshue frowned slightly. Even so, with so many cultivators rushing in at the beginning, they must have swept away all the treasures. There's probably nothing left. Let's go take a look. Su Zimo said and led the way. Just as Su Zimo had expected, the other three corridors led to the Spirit Arts Chamber, Talisman Chamber, and Array Formation Chamber. The Spirit Art and Talisman Chambers were in a mess and had been ransacked clean by many cultivators. However, there was a high chance that they were still intact in the formation chambers. That was because there was an undamaged ancient formation set up at the entrance of the formation chambers. Chapter 358. Initially, the formation at the entrance of the stone chamber was rather complicated and mysterious. However, after countless years, it was on the verge of collapse and could collapse at any moment. After observing for a while, Su Zimo began to dispel the formation. At daybreak, the ancient formation was finally dispelled. Everyone cheered and followed Su Zimo into the stone chamber. This stone chamber was much more spacious than the others. There was a stone bed in the stone room, and on top of it sat a withered corpse. The moment everyone entered the stone room, the air moved, and the corpse quietly turned into ashes. Even perfected being Jean Dan could not withstand the corrosion of time and did not leave any traces behind. This stone chamber did not look like a formation chamber. Instead, it looked more like the cultivation chamber of perfected being Jean Dan. There were a few shelves on both sides of the stone bed with many ancient books, bamboo slips, secret scrolls and jade bottles of elixirs placed on them. Su Zimo went forward and flipped through them casually. The items in the stone chamber were all-encompassing. There were some talisman crafting methods, elixir recipes and secret scrolls on formation techniques. Meridian unlocking elixir. Right then, Su Xiaoning's voice sounded, filled with surprise and joy. Everyone looked over and saw Su Xiaoning gripping a jade bottle tightly with an excited expression. There are meridian unlocking elixirs here. Ah, how many are there? Little Fatty and the others asked hurriedly. Su Xiaoning hesitated for a moment before replying slowly, 13. Ha, that's great. Si Yutang could not help but burst into laughter. If there were only 3 meridian unlocking elixirs, he would not have a chance at all. Now that there were 13 more meridian unlocking elixirs, he could definitely get one. Jun Hao was expressionless as he lowered his head slightly with a cold glint in his eyes. Su Xiaoning continued, furthermore, the meridian unlocking elixirs in this jade bottle are of a higher grade. 5 of them are superior grade while the rest are middle grade. The other cultivators exchanged glances and smiled as well. This could be considered a pleasant surprise. Including the 3 meridian unlocking pills from before, there were a total of 16 meridian unlocking pills. After distributing them to everyone, there was still a surplus. This meant that in the following period of time, everyone could choose to cultivate in seclusion and didn't have to take the risk to go out and search for treasures until they returned to the Great Zhou dynasty a year later. In the primordial battlefield, the longer one trained outside, the easier it was for one to encounter danger. Not only did they have to be wary of beasts and ancient creatures, but they also had to be wary of threats from other sects and factions. But now, all of this no longer existed. Su Zimo smiled faintly, seemingly a little absent-minded. When Ji Yaoshue saw Su Zimo's smile, she frowned slightly and fell into deep thought. The timing of taking the meridian unlocking pill was rather particular. Typically speaking, most cultivators would make use of the rich spirit qi of the ancient battlefield to cultivate. After unlocking their 6th spirit meridian, they would consume the meridian unlocking elixir and attempt to unlock their 7th spirit meridian. Among Su Zimo's group, only Ji Qingtian was at 6 meridian foundation establishment. However, Ji Qingtian held the meridian unlocking elixir in his hands and pondered for a long time without consuming it, putting it away instead. When he saw that, Su Zimo nodded to himself. It was clear that Ji Qingtian wanted to try unlocking his 7th spirit meridian with his own strength and see if he could unlock his 8th meridian by consuming the meridian unlocking elixir at the last moment. Naturally, Su Zimo would not consume it either. On one hand, it was because his cultivation realm was too low and it would be a waste for him to consume the meridian unlocking elixir at 4 meridian foundation establishment. On the other hand, the grade of the meridian unlocking elixir was way too low. Ever since he started cultivating, Su Zimo had consumed extremely few elixirs. However, all of them were perfect grade. Before entering the ancient battlefield, Su Zimo had already made up his mind to not only find the meridian unlocking elixir, he had to find a perfect grade one. The reason why foundation establishment was called foundation establishment was because it was a process of establishing one's cultivation foundation. The more perfect one's foundation establishment was, the lower the chances of problems occurring in one's future cultivation. To begin with, Su Zimo was a dual immortal and demonic cultivator. The path of the Tao was fraught with dangers and he would not allow any flaws to appear in his path of immortality. Everyone had not slept for an entire day and night and had even fought a tough battle. Now that they had settled down, they felt waves of fatigue surging through them. Without a second word, little Fatty found a random place to sleep. Shi Jian scratched his head and found a place to rest as well. If you're tired, take a rest first. Su Zimo nodded and turned to leave. Looking at Su Zimo's back view, Ji Yaoshue pondered for a moment before following him. After leaving the cave abode, Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings and soared into the air, patrolling the vicinity before returning. At the entrance of the cave abode, Ji Yaoshue stood there, looking at Su Zimo who had returned. Zimo, what are you doing? Ji Yaoshue asked. Su Zimo smiled. I've taken a look. This cave abode has a steep terrain and is located halfway up the mountain. It's easy to defend and difficult to attack. There are also some traces of formation patterns around it. I can repair them and this is an excellent place for seclusion. You guys can cultivate here in peace. Suddenly, Ji Yaoshue asked, Zimo, where are you going? Ah. Su Zimo was stunned for a moment. He did not expect that Ji Yaoshue would discover the abnormality in his unintentional words. Ji Yaoshue did not say anything and merely tilted her head slightly, looking at Su Zimo quietly. After a moment of silence, Su Zimo smiled bitterly. I want to take a look at the depths of the ancient battlefield. We have enough meridian unlocking elixirs and can cultivate here. We can return to the great Zhou dynasty after a year. It's way too dangerous to enter the depths of the ancient battlefield. Ji Yaoshue frowned. Zimo, the beasts in the depths of the ancient battlefield are not the only things that are ferocious. The cultivators you meet are strong as well and can even kill those above their level. There are also many top factions and successors of super sections. You're alone, Ji Yaoshue did not continue but there was a deep look of worry on her face. Su Zimo pretended to smile casually. It's fine. Even if I can't defeat them, I'll be able to escape given my strength. There was no way he could explain the meridian unlocking elixir in a sentence or two. Furthermore, Su Zimo could vaguely sense that even without the meridian unlocking elixir, he would still head towards the depths of the ancient battlefield without hesitation. He was not a scholar by nature and his bloodline was filled with restlessness. He was bold and fearless. He wanted to see for himself what the so-called disciples of the immortal sects, successors of the Buddhist monasteries and legacy disciples of top factions were like. Or rather, Su Zimo wanted to fight to his heart's content with those people. I'll go with you then. Ji Yaoshue said, with one more person, we'll have more power. No, Su Zimo rejected decisively and shook his head. Yaoshua, there's no need for you to risk your life in the depths of the ancient battlefield with me. You can cultivate here. I'll return after a year. Really? Ji Yaoshua pouted her lips doubtfully. Of course. Su Zimo chuckled. When are you leaving? Let's stay for a few more days. I'll repair the ancient formation around this cave abode. Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo retracted his smile and turned with a stern expression. There's something I've got to remind you. There's still a traitor among us. Ji Yaoshua's expression changed slightly as she asked, who is it? It might be Jun Hao. No matter what, Jun Hao had never done anything bad right from the beginning, and Su Zimo could not kill him just because of his suspicions. Furthermore, Jun Hao was once the senior brother of Ji Yaoshua and Xiaoning and had a special identity. He just had to inform Ji Yaoshua about this so that she could be prepared. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.